Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1. I know how my house sounds. Every step, every groan in the floorboards. I've lived here long enough to memorize them. But that night the stairs creaked out of order, not the usual 2x2 rhythm. It was slower, deliberate, like someone was trying not to be heard but didn't know how to move quietly. I froze halfway through brushing my teeth, straining to hear. The dog didn't bark. That's when I realized the sound wasn't coming from the stairs near the front door, but from the ones that led down to the basement. I never used that staircase. The basement door stood slightly ajar, though I could swear I'd closed it that morning. A faint smell drifted up, something metallic mixed with damp concrete. My hands gripped the bathroom sink until my knuckles went white. The house fell silent again, but the wrongness lingered in the air like smoke. I'd been investigating my neighbor's disappearance for 3 weeks. She vanished on a Tuesday, leaving behind a half-eaten breakfast and her keys on the kitchen counter. The police filed their reports, asked their questions, then moved on to fresher cases, but I couldn't let it go. She used to wave from her garden every morning, predictable as sunrise. People don't just evaporate. The detective assigned to her case had tired eyes and coffee stains on his shirt. He spoke in measured tones about adults having the right to disappear, about domestic situations getting complicated. But when I mentioned the unmarked van I'd seen parked outside her house the week before she vanished, something shifted in his expression. He wrote it down, asked for details I couldn't provide. The van was white, ordinary, forgettable, like it was designed to be invisible. I started keeping notes, small things that didn't fit the narrative everyone else seemed to accept. Her mail still came daily, piling up behind the storm door. Her car remained in the driveway, a thin layer of dust accumulating on the windshield. The newspaper delivery continued for days until someone finally canceled the subscription. Who cancels a missing persons newspaper? The smell from my basement grew stronger over the following days. I told myself it was probably a dead mouse or a backed up drain. Old houses develop odors, but when I finally worked up the courage to investigate, I found something that made my stomach clench. A small piece of fabric caught on the rough concrete wall near the bottom of the stairs. Pale blue cotton, the same shade as the blouse my neighbor wore in the last photograph I'd seen her in. I held that fabric between my fingers until they grew numb. The basement felt different now, charged with possibility and dread. Boxes I'd stored down there for years seemed to have shifted positions. The old freezer hummed louder than I remembered. When I opened it, cold air rushed out carrying that metallic scent. Stronger now, undeniable. My hands shook as I moved frozen vegetables and old ice cream containers. Underneath, wrapped in plastic sheeting, something that shouldn't have been there. Something that changed everything I thought I knew about my quiet neighborhood, my safe house, my own memory of that Tuesday morning. The detective's card was still pinned to my refrigerator. I stared at it for a long time, phone in hand. But as I dialed, a new thought crept in, unwelcome and persistent. I tried to remember that Tuesday morning clearly. Had I really seen my neighbor wave from her garden, or was that from the day before? The days had started blending together after my accident, after the medication started affecting my memory. My hands trembled as I hung up the phone without completing the call. The fabric in my pocket felt heavier now, like evidence of something I couldn't quite name. Outside, the unmarked white van was parked across the street again. It had been there every day since I started asking questions, watching, waiting. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. The van's windows were tinted, but I could sense movement inside. Someone was watching my house, had been watching for weeks. But were they watching because I was getting too close to the truth, or because I was the truth they were trying to contain? The basement stairs creaked again that night, the same wrong rhythm, but this time I noticed something else. The sound was coming from above me, not below. Someone was walking through my house while I sat in the basement, holding a piece of blue fabric and wondering if my neighbor had ever really existed at all. The freezer hummed its mechanical lullaby. The white van remained parked outside, and somewhere in the space between my failing memory and the evidence in my hands, the truth waited in the darkness, patient as a predator. Crime 2, when I stepped into the backyard, I expected to see the little rows of carrots I'd planted the week before. Instead, the soil was torn open like something had clawed through it. The neat lines were gone, replaced with shallow, irregular holes, each one just large enough to fit a curled-up body. There weren't any footprints around, just drag marks that stopped abruptly. The shed was locked, just like I'd left it. I hadn't told anyone I was planting out there. And I hadn't been outside since I buried the old gloves. The gloves had belonged to my neighbor. She'd left them on my porch with a note asking if I could return them to her daughter when she came by. But the daughter never came, and when I knocked on the neighbor's door, no one answered. The house stayed dark for weeks. I stood there staring at the disturbed earth, trying to remember exactly where I'd buried those gloves. The smell hit me then, not the rich scent of turned soil, but something metallic and sweet. I'd smelled it before that morning when I found the gloves soaked through with something that wasn't water. The police report I'd filed about my missing neighbor had been dismissed quickly. Adults disappear all the time, they said. She probably just moved away without telling anyone. But I'd seen her car still parked in the driveway, covered with leaves. I'd watched her mail pile up until someone finally came to collect it. I walked closer to the holes, my hands shaking. Each one was perfectly sized, as if measured. The soil around them was packed differently, looser in some spots, harder in others. Like someone had been digging and refilling, testing depths. Inside the house, I found the neighbor's note again, tucked between old bills. Her handwriting was shaky, desperate almost. Please give these to my daughter when she visits. She'll know what to do with them. But there was something else written in faint pencil underneath, words I hadn't noticed before. He watches from the shed. The shed key felt cold in my palm. I'd inherited it with the house, never questioned why it was always locked. The previous owner had died suddenly, they told me. Heart attack in his sleep. Clean, simple, no investigation needed. The lock turned easily, as if it had been used recently. Inside, garden tools hung on hooks, but everything was too clean, too organized. No dust, no cobwebs, and there on the workbench, a stack of photographs. They showed my backyard from different angles, different seasons. Some were recent. I could see my carrot rows before they'd been destroyed. Others were older, showing different plantings, different arrangements. In each photo, small marks had been made in red ink, circling spots in the soil. My hands trembled as I flipped through them. There were photos of other yards too, other gardens, all marked with the same red circles. At the bottom of the stack, a list of addresses. Mine was at the top with a check mark next to it. The neighbor's address was third on the list, also checked. I heard footsteps outside, slow and deliberate. Through the shed window, I watched someone walk across my yard, studying the holes. A man in work clothes, carrying a shovel. He moved with familiarity, like he'd done this before. He knelt beside one of the holes and began to dig deeper. The metallic smell grew stronger. I pressed myself against the shed wall, watching through the gap in the door. He pulled something from the whole fabric, dark and stained, then something else, something that caught the light wrong. When he stood up, I saw his face clearly. It was the mailman who'd been collecting my neighbor's mail, the one who'd told me she'd probably just moved away, the one who knew everyone's schedules, everyone's routines, who had keys to everything. He looked directly at the shed window and smiled. I stayed hidden until long after he left, until the sun began to set. When I finally emerged, the holes had been filled again, but not completely. Just enough to hide what was underneath, not enough to erase the evidence entirely. The photographs in my hands felt like accusations. All those addresses, all those gardens, all those people who'd probably just moved away without telling anyone. I thought about calling the police, but what would I tell them? That my mailman was gardening in my backyard, that I'd found old photographs in a shed, that my neighbor had disappeared but no one seemed to care. Instead, I went inside and locked every door, drew every curtain. But I couldn't stop thinking about those holes, perfectly sized and precisely placed, about the list with my address at the top, about how long the mailman had been watching, waiting, measuring. The next morning, I found fresh mail in my box. Bills, advertisements, the usual things, but underneath, a new note in familiar handwriting. The gloves are exactly where they should be. Thank you for your help. I never saw my neighbor again, but sometimes when I look out at my backyard, I notice the soil settling differently in certain spots, and I wonder if the carrots I planted are the only things growing there. The mailman still comes every day, always smiling, always asking how my garden is doing. He knows I know, and I know he knows I know, but what can either of us do about it now? The evidence is buried too deep, and the truth is planted too carefully to ever be completely unearthed. Some mornings I catch him measuring my yard with his eyes, calculating distances, making mental notes for his next visit to the shed. And I keep pretending that everything is normal, that gardens are just gardens, that neighbors sometimes move away without saying goodbye. Because the alternative is admitting that I've been watering someone else's secrets all along. Crime 3, it was tucked behind the washing machine, a panel I had somehow never noticed. The house inspection hadn't mentioned anything about a second basement door. I wouldn't have found it if I hadn't dropped a sock and crawled behind the machine. The panel was smooth, flush with the wall except for a tiny fingerprint smudge on the edge. I touched it and it gave way. Cold air rushed out. Inside, stairs led down into complete darkness. I stood there for a while, not sure if I was more afraid of going in or of what had already come out. The smell hit me first, not decay, nothing dramatic like that, just the scent of old paper and something metallic like coins left in a pocket too long. I grabbed my phone's flashlight and stepped down. The stairs were solid, well built. Someone had taken care to make them quiet. The room below wasn't large, maybe 8 by 10 feet. The walls were lined with shelves, and on those shelves were boxes. Dozens of them, all identical, all labeled with dates going back 30 years. I pulled one down. Inside were photographs, not the kind you'd expect in a basement storage room. They were surveillance photos, people going about their daily lives unaware they were being watched. A woman watering her garden, a man checking his mail, children playing in a yard, all taken from a distance, all marked with dates and addresses I didn't recognize. But the handwriting on the labels was familiar. I'd seen it on the mortgage papers when I bought this house. I sat on those basement steps for what felt like hours, going through box after box. The pattern became clear. The previous owner had been documenting people, families, their routines, their habits, their vulnerabilities. Some photos showed the same subjects over months, even years. I watched strangers age through these stolen moments. Then I found the recordings. Cassette tapes labeled with the same meticulous handwriting. I didn't have a player, but I knew what they contained before I heard them. Phone conversations, private moments, confessions never meant for outside ears. The metallic smell in the room suddenly made sense. It wasn't coins, it was the scent of magnetic tape, decades of recorded secrets. I brought one tape upstairs and found an old player at a thrift store. The voice that came through was a woman's, crying, talking to someone about money she'd taken from her employer. She was scared, desperate. The recording quality suggested it had been made from inside her home. In the background, I could hear a television, a dog barking, the intimate sounds of someone's private space violated. The mortgage papers were still in my kitchen drawer. I compared the handwriting. It matched perfectly. The man who sold me this house, who sat at my kitchen table and signed documents with a steady hand, had spent decades collecting other people's vulnerabilities. I called the real estate agent who handled the sale. She remembered him well. Quiet man, she said, lived alone, kept to himself, had owned the house for over 20 years. She mentioned something else that made my skin crawl. He'd asked specifically about my work schedule, my travel plans, whether I lived alone. Questions that seemed like casual conversation at the time. Back in the basement, I found a notebook. His handwriting again, but these weren't dates and addresses. These were observations about me, my morning routine, the time I left for work, when my lights went out. He'd been watching me before I ever bought the house. The sale wasn't random, I had been selected. The final box contained keys, dozens of them, each tagged with an address. Some I recognized from the photographs upstairs. Others were completely foreign, but one set made my hands shake. They were copies of my own house keys, made before I'd ever changed the locks, made before I'd even moved in. I found the locksmith's receipt in his notebook. He'd had them copied the day we signed the papers, while I was busy with the inspection and paperwork he'd kept away back in. The basement door lock was new, installed from the inside. He could come and go without my knowledge, updating his files, adding to his collection. The fingerprint on the panel wasn't mine. It was his, left behind during his last visit. I checked the recent photos in the final box. There I was, unaware and unguarded, living my life while being cataloged like a specimen. The most recent photo was taken just days before I found the door. I was in my kitchen making coffee, wearing the same robe I had on right now. The police were polite but skeptical when I called them. They took statements, collected some evidence, but explained that surveillance itself wasn't always illegal. Trespassing, yes, but proving it after the fact would be difficult, especially since I'd bought the house willingly. They suggested I change my locks and install a security system. But they missed something I couldn't explain to them. In that final box of photos, there were images of other houses, other people I'd never seen, recent photos. The handwriting on the labels was different, newer. Someone else was continuing his work. The real estate agent mentioned he'd had a business partner, someone who helped him with property management. She couldn't remember his name, but she had his number. When I called, the voice that answered was familiar. Not because I'd heard it before, but because it sounded like someone trying very hard to sound normal. He agreed to meet me, said he was sorry about what his partner had done, claimed he'd had no idea about the surveillance. But when he arrived at my house, he parked exactly where the photos had been taken from. He knew the angles, he knew the sight lines. I didn't let him in. Through the window, I watched him walk around my property, checking things that no innocent person would check. The basement window, the lock on my back gate, the sight lines from the street. That was when I realized the truth. The previous owner hadn't been a lone predator, he'd been part of something larger. The house sale, the surveillance, the careful documentation, it was all part of a system I'd stumbled into by buying this house. The man drove away without knocking, but I saw him write something in a notebook before he left. I was being cataloged again. The collection was continuing. I moved out within a month, but the feeling of being watched never left. Sometimes I catch glimpses of cars that seem familiar, faces that appear too often in different places. I changed my name, my routine, my entire life, but the sensation persists. The new owners of my old house seem happy. They wave when they see me drive by, which I do sometimes, unable to help myself. They look safe, unaware, going about their lives with the confidence of people who don't know they're being collected. I never told them about the basement door. How could I explain that their home came with invisible chains, that buying it meant joining a catalog of human specimens? How could I make them understand that somewhere in another basement, in another house, their photos are being filed away with the same meticulous care that once documented my morning coffee routine? The real question isn't who was watching me, or even who's watching now. The real question is simpler and more terrifying. How many houses like mine are there? How many basement doors are hidden behind washing machines, waiting for the right sock to drop, the right moment of curiosity to reveal what's been there all along? I still have some of those photos, evidence, I tell myself, though evidence of what I'm not entirely sure. Sometimes I look at them and wonder about the people in the images. Do they know? Have they found their own hidden doors? Or are they still living their catalogued lives, unaware that their most private moments have been collected, filed, and shared among people who see them not as human beings, but as subjects to be studied? The basement door in my old house is still there. I sealed it before I moved, but sealing a door doesn't seal the system behind it. Somewhere, someone is still turning those keys, still updating those files, still watching through windows that should protect but instead expose. And sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, I wonder if the person doing the watching now is someone I've met, someone I've trusted, someone who smiled and shook my hand while making mental notes about my vulnerabilities. The collection continues, and now I know enough to be afraid, but not enough to stop it. Crime 4, it started small, just a delay. I'd move my hand and the reflection would lag, barely noticeable. I blamed the lighting, the angle, the fog on the glass, but it got worse. I leaned in one morning and saw that my eyes weren't following. The face in the mirror looked like mine, but tired, almost angry. I tilted my head. It didn't. I closed my eyes. It stayed open. I haven't used that mirror since. But yesterday I found fingerprints on the inside of the glass. They weren't mine. That discovery sent me back through months of photographs, security footage, and police reports I'd been avoiding. I work in forensic analysis, specializing in digital evidence recovery. What started as a personal paranoia became a professional obsession when I realized the fingerprints matched a case file that had been haunting our department. The victim was a woman in her 30s, found in her apartment bathroom. No signs of forced entry, no struggle, nothing missing. She'd been discovered by her landlord after neighbors complained about water seeping through their ceiling. The bathtub had been overflowing for days. What disturbed investigators wasn't just her death, but the condition of her bathroom mirror. Someone had written messages on the inside surface of the glass, messages that could only be seen when light hit at specific angles. I pulled the case photos again, studying each detail with new eyes. The messages were fragmented, desperate, watching always, not alone, they see through. The handwriting analysis had been inconclusive. The fingerprints found throughout the apartment belonged to the victim, her landlord, and several unidentified partial prints that led nowhere. But now, staring at the prints from my own mirror, I recognized the ridge patterns. I drove to the victim's old apartment building. The new tenant, a nervous man who kept checking his phone, let me examine the bathroom. He mentioned strange things, sounds behind the walls, shadows moving past the window when no one was outside, and mirrors that seemed to fog up on their own. The previous tenant, he said, wiping sweat from his forehead despite the cool air, she used to complain to the landlord about someone getting into her apartment, but the locks were never tampered with, security cameras showed nothing. Management thought she was having mental health issues. I ran my fingers along the bathroom mirror's edges. The glass was newer than the rest of the fixtures. I asked who had replaced it. Some maintenance guy, real quiet fellow. Always wore gloves even in summer. The landlord said he was thorough, meticulous about cleaning up after himself. That maintenance worker had no official record with the building management company. No one had his real name, just a work order signature that looked practiced, deliberate. I traced the signature through other properties managed by the same company. The pattern emerged slowly. Unexplained tenant complaints about mirrors, bathroom fixtures, strange noises. Always in units occupied by single women living alone. The investigation led me to a storage facility across town. Using property records and cross-referencing maintenance requests, I identified a unit rented under the same false name. The facility's security was minimal, and the night guard, eager to help with what he thought was official police business, showed me to the unit. Inside, I found a workshop, not for repairs but for modifications. Dozens of mirrors in various stages of alteration, two-way glass panels, and surveillance equipment. But the most disturbing discovery was a collection of personal items, jewelry, photographs, clothing, toiletries, trophies from victims who probably never realized they were being watched. Among the photographs was one of me, taken through my bathroom window. The timestamp showed it was captured the same morning I first noticed the reflection delay. I called the police, but by then the storage unit had been cleaned out. The rental agreement led to another dead end, and the security footage from the facility had conveniently malfunctioned during the crucial time frame. The only evidence remaining was my testimony and the fingerprints on my mirror, which had mysteriously vanished when crime scene technicians arrived to collect them. The case officially remains unsolved. The maintenance worker was never identified, never caught, but I know he's still out there, still watching. I've moved twice since then, changed my routines, installed security systems. Yet sometimes, in peripheral vision, I catch reflections that don't quite match my movements. The department assigned me to other cases, but I keep returning to this one. I've identified 17 similar incidents across the region, all involving single women, all featuring unexplained mirror irregularities, all dismissed as coincidental or psychological. The pattern is clear to me, but proving it requires evidence that seems to disappear whenever authorities get involved. What haunts me most isn't the possibility that he's still watching other victims. It's the growing suspicion that someone in my own department might be protecting him. The evidence disappears too conveniently, the leads go cold too quickly, and my supervisor keeps reassigning me whenever I get close to connecting the dots. I've started documenting everything in hidden locations, making copies of files, recording conversations. Because I'm beginning to understand that this case isn't just about a predator who watches women through modified mirrors. It's about a network that enables him, protects him, and silences anyone who gets too close to the truth. The woman in the bathroom didn't die accidentally. She discovered what was happening and tried to expose it. Those desperate messages she left on her mirror weren't signs of paranoia. They were warnings, evidence of her final attempt to document what she'd learned before they silenced her permanently. And now I'm walking the same path she walked, knowing what she knew, carrying the same burden of proof that vanishes whenever I try to share it. The reflection in my new mirror shows someone who looks like me, but with eyes that have seen too much and hands that shake when I reach for evidence that might not be there tomorrow. The case remains open officially, but I know the truth. Justice isn't always about solving crimes. Sometimes it's about surviving long enough to ensure the next victim has a better chance than the last. Crime 5, the first few feet were normal: shoes, boxes, a few winter coats. Then I pushed further in and the wall didn't come. I kept walking. It wasn't just dark, it was silent, like all sound had been swallowed. The floor felt soft, not like wood, more like dirt. I turned to step out, but the light from my bedroom had vanished. I don't know how long I was in there before I backed out into my room again. Except now, every time I open that closet, something inside smells faintly like old perfume, and I live alone. I should have called someone right away. Instead, I spent the next few days pretending nothing had happened. But that perfume, it lingered in my clothes, on my hands, even after I showered. It was familiar somehow, like a memory I couldn't quite place. Sweet but sour, floral but with something underneath that made my stomach turn. The apartment had been empty for months before I moved in. The landlord mentioned the previous tenant had left suddenly, abandoning most of her belongings. He'd cleared everything out, he said, donated it all. But standing in front of that closet, breathing in that strange scent, I wondered what he might have missed. I started small, measuring the closet from inside, then walking around to the other side of the wall. The dimensions didn't match. There was space that shouldn't exist, a gap between what I could see and what I could touch. When I pressed my ear to the wall in the hallway, I heard nothing. But sometimes, late at night, I swear I can hear something shifting behind there. The building manager was defensive when I asked about renovations, about whether walls had been moved or modified. His eyes kept darting away from mine, and his hands shook slightly as he flipped through maintenance records. Nothing unusual, he insisted. Nothing that would explain what I was experiencing. I found her name in old mail that had been stuffed behind the radiator, envelopes addressed to someone whose name I won't repeat, someone who had lived here before me. The return addresses told a story: credit card companies, collection agencies, medical bills, a life falling apart in slow motion. The police report was public record. Missing person, filed by a coworker who hadn't seen her in weeks. No signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play. Personal effects were gone, suggesting she had left voluntarily. Case closed after 6 months, but the report mentioned one detail that made my hands shake. The investigating officer noted an unusual odor in the apartment, described as floral perfume mixed with something organic and unidentifiable. I called the coworker who had filed the report. She agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown, her voice tight with old worry. She was smaller than I'd expected, with nervous energy that made her fingers tap constantly against her cup. She told me about the final weeks, how her colleague had become paranoid, talking about feeling watched, about spaces in her apartment that didn't feel right. She said the walls were wrong, the woman whispered, glancing around as if someone might be listening. She'd measured everything obsessively, convinced someone was living in the spaces between rooms. I thought she was having a breakdown. The disappearance hadn't been sudden, she explained. It had been gradual, like she was slowly being erased. First she stopped coming to work regularly, then stopped answering her phone. When the coworker finally convinced the landlord to do a wellness check, the apartment was neat, clean, and empty of personal belongings, but that smell was everywhere. I went back to the building manager with new questions. This time I brought a copy of the police report. His reaction was immediate and telling. He went pale, started sweating, couldn't meet my eyes. After several minutes of stammering, he admitted something he hadn't told the police. He'd been in the apartment the day before she was reported missing. She'd called him frantic, saying something was wrong with her closet. He'd gone up to check, found her sitting on her bed, staring at the open closet door. She was calm by then, too calm. She thanked him for coming, but said she'd figured it out, that she understood now what was happening. He left feeling uneasy, but didn't think much of it until she vanished. What did she say she'd figured out? I asked. His answer made my blood cold. She said she wasn't alone, that she'd never been alone. I spent the next week avoiding the closet entirely, but the smell was getting stronger. It seemed to seep through the walls, into my clothes, my food, my dreams. I started sleeping with the bedroom door locked, though I couldn't explain why that made me feel safer. One night I heard scratching. Soft, rhythmic, like fingernails against wood. It was coming from inside the closet. I lay in bed, heart pounding, listening to that sound for what felt like hours. When silence finally returned, I found 3 long scratches on the inside of my bedroom door, fresh scratches that hadn't been there before. I called the police the next morning, but what could I tell them? That my closet was too deep, that it smelled like someone who had disappeared, that I heard sounds from spaces that shouldn't exist. They took my statement with the patience of people who deal with odd calls regularly and promised to send someone by to check the apartment. The officer who came was thorough but skeptical. He measured the closet, examined the walls, tested the floorboards. Everything seemed normal to him. But as he was leaving, he paused at the door and asked if I'd ever considered that some buildings have histories that live in their walls, that some spaces hold onto things long after they should have let go. I found myself thinking about her more often, the woman who had lived here before me. I imagined her sitting where I sit now, smelling what I smell, hearing what I hear. I wondered if she had figured out what was happening to her, or if she had simply accepted it, the way I was beginning to accept it. The scratching has become regular now, always at the same time each night. Sometimes I stand at the closet door and listen, trying to understand what it's trying to tell me. The perfume is stronger now, mixing with something else, something earthier and more troubling. I've stopped trying to measure the space or make sense of the dimensions. Some questions don't have answers that fit into the world we think we understand. But I keep wondering about her final days, about what she discovered in that impossible space, about whether she left voluntarily or whether something else made that choice for her. The building manager won't return my calls anymore. The coworker has moved away, left no forwarding information. The police file on her disappearance has been archived, officially closed. But here I am, living in her space, breathing her air, listening to sounds that shouldn't exist. Sometimes I catch myself staring at that closet door for hours, wondering what would happen if I walked into that darkness and kept walking. Would I find her there, in that space between spaces? Would I understand finally what she had figured out in those final days? The smell is different tonight, stronger, more familiar, like it's becoming part of me the way it became part of her. I wonder if whoever moves in after me will notice it too, or if by then it will just be another layer in the history of this place, another story the walls refuse to forget. I'm not sure I want to leave anymore. I'm not sure I can. Crime 6, it wasn't a sound, not really, more like a pulse. I felt it through my socks, a slight rise and fall beneath the hardwood floor. I knelt down and pressed my palm against it. It moved, slow, rhythmic, not creaking, not shifting, breathing. I pulled up one of the floorboards, expecting to find broken pipes or maybe something rotting. Instead, I found empty space, just blackness. And the faint impression of handprints in the dust, perfectly spaced like someone had been pushing from underneath. I had inherited this house from my aunt after she passed. The family lawyer handed me the keys with an odd expression, like he wanted to say something but changed his mind. The house felt normal enough during the day, sunlight streaming through the windows, birds chirping outside. But at night, when the silence settled, I could feel that pulse beneath my feet. The first week I convinced myself it was the old heating system. Houses settle, I told myself. Wood expands and contracts, but the heating had been disconnected for months. The utility company confirmed it when I called to have it turned back on. The technician who came out was a quiet man with calloused hands. He spent an hour checking the basement, then emerged looking puzzled. "Ma'am, there's no heating system down there, just concrete and dirt. Looks like it was removed a while back." I followed him down to see for myself. The basement was smaller than I expected, with rough concrete walls and a dirt floor. In one corner I noticed the concrete looked newer, a different shade of gray. When I asked about it, the technician shrugged. "Could be a repair job, maybe there was water damage." After he left, I called my cousin, the only family member who might remember details about the house. She was hesitant to talk, her voice strained over the phone. "Your aunt was very private about that house. She lived alone for so long, you know. Sometimes people get strange ideas when they're isolated." "What kind of strange ideas?" A long pause. She used to call me at odd hours, saying she heard things, voices, movement. I thought it was just loneliness, but then she stopped calling altogether. That was about 2 years before she died. I found my aunt's old phone in a drawer upstairs. The battery was dead, but I managed to charge it. Her call log showed dozens of calls to emergency services, all lasting only a few seconds. When I contacted the local dispatch, they told me the calls were mostly hang-ups or reports of intruders that officers could never confirm. "Your aunt was a sweet lady, but she seemed very anxious toward the end. We did wellness checks on her regularly." I decided to review the police reports. The officer who handled most of the calls agreed to meet me at a coffee shop downtown. He was a middle-aged man with tired eyes who kept stirring his coffee long after the sugar had dissolved. She was convinced someone was living in her house without her knowing. Said she could hear breathing in the walls, footsteps in the basement. We searched that place top to bottom more times than I can count. Never found anything. "Did you ever check under the floorboards?" His spoon stopped moving. "Can't say we did. Why would we? There was never any evidence of forced entry, no signs of disturbance. We figured it was just an elderly woman living alone, letting her imagination run wild." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the handprints in the dust, the way they were positioned like someone had been lying on their back, pushing upward. I went downstairs and pressed my ear to the floor. The breathing was there, faint but unmistakable. I grabbed a flashlight and pried up more boards. The space beneath was larger than I initially thought, extending under most of the living room. The dirt was packed down in places, forming shallow impressions the size of a human body. I found a small plastic bag wedged between two support beams. Inside were personal items, a driver's license, a watch, a wedding ring. The license photo showed a young woman with kind eyes and a nervous smile. The expiration date was from 3 years ago. I researched the name on the license online. Missing person reports, family pleas, search efforts that eventually went cold. She had disappeared while walking home from her job at a nearby restaurant. Her car was found abandoned on a rural road, but she was never seen again. The investigation had focused on the area where her car was discovered, miles from my aunt's house. I called the detective who had handled the case. He was retired now, but he remembered her well. Sweet kid worked double shifts to support her sick mother, never caused trouble for anyone. The whole thing just ate at me, you know. Cases like that, they stay with you. When I told him what I'd found, he went quiet for a long moment. I'll be over in the morning with a team. Don't touch anything else. The next day, they excavated the space under the floorboards. They found remains not just of the missing woman, but of two others. People who had vanished over the past decade, their cases scattered across different jurisdictions, never connected. The forensic team worked methodically, documenting everything. One of them, a woman with graying hair and gentle hands, pulled me aside. The positioning suggests they were kept alive for some time. There are scratches on the underside of the floorboards, where patterns that indicate prolonged movement. My aunt's medical records showed she had been prescribed anxiety medication and sleeping pills in increasing doses over the past few years. Her doctor noted that she complained of insomnia and persistent fears about her safety. She had asked about installing security cameras and changing her locks multiple times. I found her diary hidden in the attic, wrapped in plastic inside an old suitcase. The entries from her final months painted a picture of growing terror and confusion. She wrote about hearing muffled cries, about the floor moving beneath her feet, about waking up to find muddy footprints in her kitchen that she couldn't explain. But the most disturbing entry was from just weeks before her death. I think I know who it is. I think I've always known. But if I'm right, then I've been living with this knowledge for years, and that makes me complicit. How do you report a crime when you're not sure if you're the victim or the accomplice? The investigation expanded to include my aunt's background. Neighbors remembered her as a quiet woman who kept to herself, but they also recalled seeing various people coming and going from her house over the years. Maintenance workers, delivery drivers, acquaintances from her church. The detective showed me photos of several suspects, but none of them seemed to fit. The crimes required someone with consistent access to the house, someone my aunt trusted enough to let inside repeatedly. I stayed in a hotel while the forensic team finished their work. When they were done, they sealed the house as a crime scene. I never went back inside, but I drove by sometimes, looking at the dark windows and wondering what my aunt had really known. The case made headlines for a while, then faded as other news took its place. The detective called me months later with an update. They had identified the remains and closed several missing person cases, but they never found the killer. The evidence was too degraded, the timeline too complex. The case went cold again, filed away with dozens of others that would never see resolution. I sold the house to a developer who planned to tear it down. At the closing, the buyer mentioned that several contractors had refused to bid on the demolition. When pressed for details, they said the workers complained about the smell, not decay or mold, but something else, something that reminded them of fear. Crime 7, it hit me while I was brushing my teeth. I glanced down and realized there were 4 toothbrushes in the cup. I only own 2. I live alone. I stared at them, trying to remember if I'd bought extras. One had wet bristles. I hadn't touched it. I checked the bathroom trash. Nothing new. The window was locked. I opened the cabinet and a hairbrush I'd never seen fell out. I waited outside for hours that night. In the morning, there were 5 toothbrushes. The detective said it was probably nothing. People forget what they buy. Maybe a friend left something behind, but I knew my bathroom better than anyone. Every tube of toothpaste, every bottle of shampoo. I'd lived in that apartment for 3 years, and nothing ever appeared without my knowledge. I started keeping a notebook, every object, every position, photographed and documented. The coffee mug that appeared on my kitchen counter. The book on my nightstand with pages I'd never read. Someone was coming into my home, leaving pieces of themselves behind like breadcrumbs in a fairy tale I didn't want to follow. The locksmith found no signs of forced entry. The windows were secure, the door unmarked. He suggested I change the locks anyway, so I did. That same evening, I found a pair of reading glasses on my dining table. They weren't mine. The prescription was stronger than what I needed, and they smelled faintly of vanilla perfume. I called the police again. A different officer came this time, younger, more patient. She walked through my apartment with careful steps, her boots clicking against the hardwood floor. She examined the glasses, turning them over in her gloved hands. No fingerprints, she said, clean as if they'd been wiped down. She asked if I had any enemies, any ex-partners who might want to disturb my peace. I shook my head. My life was quiet, predictable. I worked from home, ordered groceries online, barely spoke to my neighbors. But that night, lying in bed, I remembered something. The woman who lived in the apartment before me had left suddenly. The landlord mentioned it once, how she'd packed up in the middle of the night, left half her security deposit behind. He seemed nervous when he talked about it, kept glancing toward the windows as if she might return. I started researching her. The previous tenant's name was on some old mail that occasionally found its way to my box. I traced her through social media, through public records, through the digital footprints we all leave behind without thinking. What I found made my hands shake as I held my phone. She'd reported the same thing, objects appearing in her apartment, personal items that weren't hers. She'd filed multiple police reports, changed her locks twice, even installed security cameras. The cameras caught nothing. No one entering, no one leaving. Just objects materializing like they'd always belonged there. Her last post on social media was a video. She was standing in what I now recognized as my bathroom, pointing at the toothbrush holder. 7 toothbrushes, she counted. 7. Her voice was thin, stretched tight with exhaustion and fear. The video ended abruptly, and she never posted again. I found her new address through a forwarding service. She lived 3 states away now, in a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business. When I called, her voice dropped to a whisper the moment I mentioned the apartment address. She asked me to hold on, and I heard footsteps, a door closing. She told me things that made my skin crawl, how the objects weren't random. They belonged to someone who'd lived in that apartment before both of us. A woman who disappeared one winter, leaving behind a lease that was quietly transferred, belongings that were quietly disposed of. The landlord never mentioned her. The police file was thin, inconclusive. Missing person cases go cold faster than anyone wants to admit. But her things kept coming back, like she was still trying to live there, still trying to exist in the space she'd called home. The toothbrushes, the hairbrush, the reading glasses, the coffee mug, all items found in her apartment when the police did their initial search. All cataloged, stored in evidence, then released to her family when the case stalled. Her family, I found them too, parents who'd aged decades in the years since their daughter vanished. They told me about the boxes they'd received from the police, how they couldn't bear to keep her things, how they donated everything to charity. But charity shops don't always keep good records. Items get sold, resold, passed from hand to hand until their history dissolves. Except some items find their way back, like they remember where they belong. I spent weeks trying to trace the objects. The reading glasses came from an estate sale across town. The hairbrush was purchased online from someone cleaning out their grandmother's house. The coffee mug came from a thrift store that couldn't remember who donated it. Each item had traveled its own path back to this apartment, back to where they'd once lived with their owner. The police detective I'd been working with had gone quiet. When I called, she said the case was being reviewed by someone else. I never heard from anyone else. The landlord started avoiding my calls. My neighbors, who'd never been particularly friendly, now crossed the street when they saw me coming. I realized I was becoming the problem. The woman who saw things that weren't there, who believed in ghost stories and impossible coincidences. The woman who was probably disturbed, probably unstable, probably making it all up for attention. But every morning there were more toothbrushes. I started sleeping with the bathroom door closed, a chair wedged against it. I installed my own cameras, hidden ones that the previous tenant's mysterious visitor wouldn't notice. For weeks, they recorded nothing but my own movement through the apartment, empty hours of static space. Then one morning, reviewing the footage, I saw it. A figure moving through my living room in the early darkness before dawn. Not breaking in, not forcing entry, but moving with familiarity through the space. Someone who knew where the floor creaked, where the light switches were, where I kept my spare keys. Someone who had keys of their own. The figure was wearing a winter coat despite the season, hood pulled up, face obscured. They moved directly to the bathroom, placed something on the counter, then stood there for several minutes just looking around, like they were remembering, like they were saying goodbye. When they left, they used the front door. No struggle with locks, no gimmied windows. They simply walked out the way they'd walked in, like they belonged there. I called the detective with the video evidence, but the file had been transferred again. No one could tell me where. The case had become a bureaucratic ghost, shuffled between departments until it disappeared entirely. I kept the cameras running. The visitor came every few weeks, always before dawn, always leaving something behind. A lipstick, a bookmark, a small ceramic cat, personal items that spoke of a life interrupted, a routine abandoned. I began to understand that I wasn't the victim here. I was the witness. The apartment wasn't being invaded, it was being visited. Someone was trying to maintain a connection to a life that had been stolen from them, and I was the unfortunate obstacle in their path. The question that kept me awake wasn't who was entering my home, it was why they could. Crime 8, at first I thought the voices were from the neighbors, muffled, low, indistinct, but they kept coming from the same wall, the one that connects to the old crawl space. I tried to ignore it, then I started hearing scratching. Slow, methodical, it stopped whenever I walked into the room. I put my ear to the wall and heard breathing. Steady, alive, I knocked once, something knocked back twice. The house had been on the market for months before I bought it. The previous owner left in a hurry, according to the realtor. Personal matters, she said, avoiding my eyes when I asked for details. The price was too good to refuse, even with the outdated kitchen and the strange layout that seemed to waste space in odd corners. I started keeping a journal of the sounds, 3 knocks in the afternoon, whispers that sounded like conversations but never clear enough to understand the words. The scratching always came at the same intensity, like fingernails against wood, but with a rhythm that seemed almost deliberate. When I mentioned it to my sister during our weekly call, she suggested mice or settling foundation, but mice don't knock back. The breakthrough came when I found the box in the basement, tucked behind the water heater, wrapped in plastic sheeting that crinkled when I moved it. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, all taken from inside the house I now lived in. Pictures of the living room, the kitchen, the bedroom where I slept, but they weren't real estate photos. These were surveillance images, taken at different angles, some through windows, others from positions that seemed impossible unless someone had been hiding inside the walls themselves. At the bottom of the box, beneath layers of photographs, I found a small recording device. Old but functional, I pressed play. The voice that came through was calm, measured, documenting observations like a scientist studying lab rats. The subject goes to bed around the same time each night. The subject prefers the left side of the couch. The subject talks to herself when she thinks no one is listening. The voice was describing me, but the recordings were dated from before I moved in. I called the previous owner's number, still listed in the paperwork. A woman answered, her voice tight with something that might have been fear or exhaustion. When I told her my name and address, the line went quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. Then she spoke, barely above a whisper. "You found it, didn't you? The box." I told them to tear down that wall, but they said it would cost too much. She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop across town. She looked older than her age, with shadows under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. She ordered nothing, just sat with her hands folded, staring at the table between us. She told me about her husband, how he'd become obsessed with the idea that someone was watching them, how he'd installed cameras throughout the house, convinced that an intruder was coming and going at will. How the scratching in the walls had driven him to tear apart sections of drywall, searching for evidence of an intruder who left no other trace. The night she left, she said, she'd woken to find him standing in the hallway, staring at the wall, talking to someone who wasn't there, or someone she couldn't see. She packed a bag and never came back. The divorce papers were filed from her sister's house 3 states away. But here's what she didn't tell me until I pressed her. Here's what made her hands shake as she spoke. Her husband hadn't just been documenting an intruder. He'd been documenting her. Every movement, every habit, every private moment. The recordings I'd found weren't evidence of someone breaking in. They were evidence of someone who'd never left. I went back to the house that afternoon with a crowbar and a flashlight. The wall gave way easier than I expected, revealing a space just wide enough for a person to crawl through. The smell hit me first, stale air and something else, something organic and wrong. Inside the space, I found more recording equipment, batteries, water bottles, and food wrappers. Someone had been living in my walls. But the space connected to other areas of the house through a network of passages that ran behind every room. Whoever had built this system had planned it carefully, with access points hidden behind furniture and inside closets. I followed the main passage with my flashlight, my heart hammering against my ribs. The passage ended at a small room I'd never known existed, tucked between the basement and the main floor. Inside were monitors showing live feeds from cameras I hadn't found yet. Cameras that were still recording. The screens showed my living room, my bedroom, my kitchen. In one corner of the room sat a sleeping bag and personal belongings that looked recently used. I called the police from my car, parked 3 blocks away. When they arrived, they found the hidden room, the recording equipment, and evidence that someone had been living in the house's hidden spaces for months, but they didn't find the person. The detective assigned to the case told me the previous owner's husband had been declared missing 6 months earlier. His car was found abandoned, but his body was never recovered. The case remains open. I moved out the next week, but I still get calls from the detective sometimes. They want to know if I remember anything else, any detail that might help them understand what happened in that house. But there's one thing I've never told them. One detail I can't bring myself to share. The last recording I found, the one dated just 2 days before I discovered the hidden room, contained my voice. Clear as day, talking to myself in the kitchen, discussing my plans for the weekend. But I was alone in the house when I had that conversation, or at least I thought I was. Sometimes I wonder if the knocking I heard was someone trying to get out, not get in. And sometimes, in my new apartment, I think I hear scratching in the walls, but I've learned not to knock back. Crime 9, he always comes back with sticks. That's our routine. I throw, he runs, returns, but this time he dropped something soft onto the porch. I didn't realize what it was until I stepped closer. Pale, clean, no blood, just a human finger. I checked the backyard, then the front, then the woods. No one in sight. I wrapped it in a towel and locked the doors. That night he waited by the door for hours, tail still wagging, waiting for me to throw whatever came next. The police arrived before sunrise, 2 officers with tired eyes and coffee breath. They bagged the finger, asked about neighbors, recent visitors, anything unusual. I told them about the construction site half a mile through the trees, about the new family that moved in last month, about the jogger who'd been running past our house every morning since spring. They nodded, took notes, promised to investigate. But I couldn't stop thinking about how clean it was. No dirt, no decay, no signs of animal damage. It looked like it had been severed recently, maybe preserved somehow. The nail was trimmed, the skin soft. This wasn't some old buried remains my dog had dug up. This was fresh. I started paying attention to things I'd never noticed before. The jogger hadn't passed by in 3 days. The new neighbors kept their curtains drawn, even during the day. The construction workers seemed to work in complete silence now. No radio, no shouting, just the sound of machinery echoing through the trees. My dog kept returning to the same spot in the woods. I followed him one afternoon, watching as he sniffed around a cluster of pine trees. The ground looked disturbed, not recently, but sometime in the past few weeks. Leaves had been scattered over patches of darker soil. I knelt down and caught a scent that didn't belong, something sweet and chemical, like cleaning products mixed with something organic. I called the detective handling the case, a woman with a voice that sounded like she'd heard everything before. She listened as I described the spot, the disturbed earth, the strange smell. She said she'd send someone to check it out. But when I walked back there 2 days later, the area had been covered with fresh dirt and new plantings. Someone had been there before the police. The construction site went quiet that week. No workers, no machinery, just empty trailers and equipment sitting in the mud. I drove past it on my way to work, watching for any signs of activity. The gate was always locked, the site always empty. But I noticed tire tracks in the soft ground, fresh ones that appeared overnight and disappeared by morning. I started keeping a journal, writing down everything I observed. The jogger who used to run past our house every morning at the same time had completely vanished. The new neighbors still kept their curtains drawn, but I could see shadows moving behind them, always at least 2 people, sometimes 3. And my dog had started bringing back other things from the woods, pieces of fabric, a button, a cell phone case with scratches across the screen. The detective called me back after a week. They'd found nothing at the site I'd described. No evidence of disturbance, no chemical smells, no signs that anything had been buried or removed. She suggested that perhaps I was letting my imagination run wild, that finding the finger had traumatized me more than I realized. She recommended I speak to someone, get some help processing what I'd experienced. But I knew what I'd seen, I knew what I'd smelled, and I knew my dog was still finding things in those woods that didn't belong there. I decided to watch the construction site myself. I parked across the street one evening, engine off, windows cracked. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the empty lot. That's when I saw them. 3 figures moving between the trailers, carrying something heavy wrapped in plastic. They worked quickly, efficiently, like they'd done this before. When they finished, they scattered dirt over the area and left in separate vehicles. I followed one of them, a pickup truck that drove through residential neighborhoods, past schools and parks, normal places where normal people lived normal lives. The truck pulled into a driveway 2 streets over from the construction site. a house with drawn curtains and a yard that looked like it hadn't been maintained in months. The next morning I walked past that house. The mailbox had a name I didn't recognize, but there was something familiar about the property. The windows were covered with newspapers from the inside. The grass was overgrown, but there were paths worn through it, like people had been walking the same routes over and over. And in the backyard, barely visible through a gap in the fence, I could see what looked like a burned pile with ash that was still fresh. My dog found more pieces over the following days. A watch band, a piece of jewelry, a fragment of what looked like identification. Each item was clean, like it had been washed or stored somewhere dry and dark. I collected everything in a box, not sure what to do with it. The police had already dismissed my concerns. The detective had stopped returning my calls. I realized I was being watched. The same car parked across from my house at different times during the day. Different people walking past my property, always slowing down, always looking toward the woods where my dog played. One evening I found footprints in my backyard, near the area where my dog had first found the finger. Someone had been standing there watching my house, watching me. The construction site remained empty for 2 more weeks, then suddenly it was active again. New workers, new equipment, new management. The old trailers were hauled away. The disturbed ground was covered with concrete. Within days, the entire lot looked completely different, like nothing had ever happened there. I kept walking past the house with the covered windows. One morning, I noticed the newspapers had been removed. The windows were clean, the yard had been mowed, and there was a for sale sign in the front yard. When I checked the real estate listing online, the photos showed an empty house that looked like it had been recently cleaned and renovated. No signs of the burned pile, no overgrown paths, no evidence of recent occupancy. My dog stopped finding things in the woods. He'd still run to the same spot, but he'd come back empty-handed, confused, like whatever he'd been tracking had simply vanished. I continued to check the area, but the chemical smell was gone. The disturbed earth had been covered with new growth, and the trails he'd been following had been obscured by fallen leaves and recent rain. The detective called me one final time. She said they'd closed the case. The finger had been identified as belonging to someone who died in an accident several states away. A medical examiner's office had been transporting remains when a vehicle breakdown had resulted in some materials being scattered. Everything had been accounted for. There was no crime, no investigation needed, no reason for continued concern. But I still have the box of items my dog found. I still drive past the empty construction site and the house that was sold to a family who has no idea what might have happened in their backyard. And I still watch my dog when we play fetch, wondering if he remembers what he found, wondering if he's still looking for traces of something that everyone else insists never existed. Sometimes, late at night, I can smell that chemical sweetness in the air. Sometimes I hear machinery running in the distance, even though there's no construction scheduled in our area. And sometimes I wonder if the finger was just the beginning, if my dog had found the one piece of evidence that someone forgot to hide, and if everything that happened afterward was designed to make me question what I knew to be true. Story 10. The ancient box lay hidden beneath layers of clutter in the attic, a silent witness to the passage of time and the forgotten memories of the house's past inhabitants. Among the faded Polaroids it held, capturing moments of joy and togetherness, there was one that stood out, shrouded in a veil of mystery that sent shivers down Rebecca's spine. In that peculiar photograph, taken within the familiar confines of her living room, a family unknown to her sat cheerfully on the couch, their smiles frozen in time. Yet lurking in the shadows behind them stood a figure, a man whose presence felt palpable, his gaze fixed on the camera with an intensity that sent a chill through Rebecca's soul. Descending the staircase with a sense of unease weighing heavily on her, she placed the enigmatic photo on her kitchen counter under the harsh glare of the fluorescent light. The uncanny resemblance of the setting to her own home only deepened the enigma as the faces of strangers stared back at her from the image. Enter Detective Morgan, a seasoned investigator with a weathered exterior that hinted at a lifetime of unraveling mysteries. With a keen eye and a methodical approach, he delved into the tangled web of the house's history, seeking to unearth the truth behind the unsettling photograph. As the investigation unfolded, a pattern emerged: a series of families, each residing in the house for precisely 1 year before vanishing without a trace, leaving behind a void that echoed with unanswered questions. The trail led back through the years, revealing a dark legacy woven into the very foundations of the house. Forensic analysis shed light on the photograph's origins, pointing to a timer used to capture the staged scene, a scene that hinted at a sinister presence lurking within the walls of the house. And as the layers of concrete were peeled away in the depths of the basement, the chilling truth was laid bare. Beneath the cold earth lay the remnants of those lost families, their final moments frozen in time by the lens of a camera wielded by an unseen voyeur. Among their possessions, the camera that had captured their unwitting smiles, sealing their fates within its frame. But the revelation only deepened the mystery, for the shadowy figure in the photograph remained elusive, its identity intertwined with that of Samuel Whitfield, a spectral presence from the house's past whose dark legacy haunted its halls. As Rebecca sought refuge in a hotel, shielded by a veil of protection from the unknown threat that loomed, a sense of foreboding lingered in the air. The phone call in the dead of night, the mechanical click of a camera, all served as a haunting reminder that the specter of Samuel Whitfield still watched from the shadows, his gaze fixed on those who dared to uncover the truth. And so the house stood silent and empty, its secrets buried within its walls, waiting to be unveiled by those brave enough to confront the darkness that lingered within. The legacy of Samuel Whitfield lived on, a ghostly presence that whispered of forgotten sins and unseen eyes that watched from the shadows, forever haunting the halls of the house that time forgot. Story 11. In the quiet town, there was a house nestled at the edge of the woods, shrouded in mystery. It stood alone, with windows darkened and a porch weighed down by the passage of time. No one laid claim to it, and its origins were lost to memory, fading like whispers in the wind. But when a group of hikers ventured too close, they stumbled upon a chilling sight: names etched into the wooden siding, carved deep like silent warnings. And there at the very end, a name unknown to them all, fresh and untouched by the hands of time. A name that sent shivers down their spines as one of them whispered, trembling, "That's mine." When the call came in the dead of night, it was logged as a routine trespassing incident. The voice on the other end belonged to Mason Wright, the lead hiker who had made the unsettling discovery of his own name engraved on the abandoned house. The responding officers anticipated a simple case of mischief or a prank gone awry among young friends, but what they encountered defied logic and reason. Detective Sarah Keller arrived as darkness blanketed the forest, her flashlight cutting through the shadows to reveal the weathered facade of the mysterious dwelling. The names, 27 in total, cascaded down the eastern wall like a haunting chorus of the lost. Some names had faded into obscurity, blending with the aged wood, while others remained sharp and distinct as if carved just yesterday. And at the very bottom, Mason Wright, the letters still bearing the scent of freshly cut wood. "I've never set foot here before," Mason insisted, his breath visible in the chill of the night air. How could anyone know my name? Thus began the investigation, a journey into the unknown that would shake the very foundation of the tight-knit community. Background checks were conducted on each name listed on the wall, sending a chill through the hearts of the detective team. Every name belonged to a soul reported missing over the span of 4 decades, some cases gone cold, others still hauntingly open. Yet all shared a sinister connection. Each individual had vanished while hiking alone, swallowed by the silent embrace of the woods. Forensic analysts meticulously documented the carvings, noting the varying depths, techniques, and weathering patterns. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, traced back to a missing persons case from 37 years past, a tale of a young woman who ventured into the forest, never to return, leaving behind only a solitary hiking boot by a babbling stream. Detective Keller delved deep into Mason's past, probing for any link to the enigmatic house or its macabre history. His story remained unwavering, no ties to the area beyond a chance hiking trip with college companions, no threads connecting him to the other names etched in wood. Attention shifted to Mason's fellow hikers. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, shared snapshots captured during their trek. Upon scrutiny, analysts unearthed a disquieting presence in the background of multiple photos, a blurred figure, tall and slender, lurking amidst the trees, a specter unseen by the naked eye. A search of the house's interior unveiled a grim tableau. Amidst the dust and disarray, a basement harbored a chilling secret, a collection of personal effects belonging to the missing hikers, meticulously arranged on wooden shelves. Watches frozen in time, backpacks laden with memories, cameras holding silent snapshots, wallets carrying untold stories. Each item labeled with a name from the wall outside, a macabre catalog of the lost. Beneath the harsh glare of ultraviolet light, traces of blood painted a grim tapestry on the basement floor, echoes of past horrors scrubbed in vain. Cadaver dogs hinted at hidden truths lurking beneath the forest's dense cloak, their noses leading them to the darkest corners of the property. As the investigation deepened, Mason's demeanor took a dark turn. He spoke of phantom whispers in the night, fresh footprints leading to his threshold but never away, and shadowy figures stalking his every move. The department assigned a guardian to shield him from unseen threats, yet paranoia crept into his every breath. A breakthrough emerged from Buried County, records a revelation that the house once belonged to a recluse named Victor Blackwood, a shadowy figure lost to time. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones of fleeting encounters with a tall, gaunt man who shunned the light of day. Blackwood's disappearance 15 years prior had slipped through the cracks, a mystery left to fester in the annals of the forgotten. Armed with a warrant, Detective Keller spearheaded a search of the surrounding forest, unearthing a network of primitive hunting blinds strategically positioned along well-trodden paths. Within one blind lay a journal, a chilling testament to a mind warped by darkness. The entries evolved from hunting strategies for beasts to a macabre treatise on humans as prey, meticulous notes on their vulnerabilities, routines, and the art of their collection. The manhunt for Blackwood spanned jurisdictions, a race against time to halt a predator in the guise of a man. Helicopters scoured the forest with thermal eyes, while ground teams combed every crevice and cavern. Yet the elusive figure remained a ghost, slipping through their grasp like mist. Mason Wright's silence rang louder with each passing day, until his apartment stood empty, a specter of the life he once knew. On his bedroom wall, a fresh inscription bore witness to his fate: "The hunter becomes the hunted." The search for Mason spiraled into a relentless pursuit, his absence a void that echoed through the forest's depths. During a second sweep of Blackwood's house, A chilling revelation surfaced: a hidden workshop concealed behind a false wall, adorned with tools of the trade, and a freshly carved name awaiting its place on the wall of the damned. Detective Keller's blood ran cold as she recognized the name, the lead forensic technician who had probed the house's secrets, now swallowed by its darkness. Authorities encircled the house with a vigilant watch, cameras poised to capture any intruder's approach. Motion sensors stood sentinel, ready to sound the alarm. And on a fateful night, the trap sprung to life. A figure emerged from the shadows, towering and sinewy, moving with an otherworldly grace toward the house, heedless of the watchful eyes upon him. As tactical units closed in, the cameras faltered, losing sight of the figure in the blink of an eye. When the feed flickered back to life, the specter had vanished without a trace, leaving only questions in his wake. The house stood silent, a sentinel of secrets unrevealed. To this day, the house remains a place of whispered dread, its walls bearing witness to the names no one dares speak aloud. Mason Wright and the forensic technician vanished into the night, swallowed whole by the enigma that gripped the town. The investigation persists, drawing in fresh resources as new tales of disappearances echo through the forest's embrace. The names etched in wood have become a haunting legend, a cautionary tale that lingers on the lips of those who dare to venture near a tale of the lost, the hunted, and the house at the edge of the woods, where darkness reigns supreme. Story 12, the weathered envelope exuded a sense of history, its edges tinged with the passage of time, yet the stamp upon it was fresh, bearing the mark of recent travels through the postal system. With a delicate touch, the detective unfolded the envelope, revealing a solitary sheet of paper within. The message typed upon it seemed to rush across the page in an uneven, hurried font. "I am sorry for what I did." A subtle dampness clung to the paper, carrying with it a faint scent of iron that lingered in the air. It was then that the detective's gaze fell upon a reddish smear along the bottom edge of the page, a grim revelation that this was no ordinary message. Detective Sarah Morgan, with practiced precision, placed the ominous letter into an evidence bag, her gloved hands handling it with care. The forensics team's findings confirmed her suspicions. The reddish stain was indeed human blood, a chilling echo of an unsolved homicide that had cast a long shadow over the department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been discovered in her apartment, bearing the brutal wounds of a violent attack. Her laptop was missing, her notes scattered, a poignant testament to a life cut short in pursuit of the truth. Despite tireless efforts and countless dead ends, the case had grown cold, its secrets buried deep within the past. But now a simple letter addressed to the Homicide Division had emerged, offering a glimmer of hope in the form of a macabre clue. The scant fingerprints on the paper and envelope hinted at a meticulous sender, one who had taken care to leave behind only smudges that revealed nothing of their identity. Gathering her team in the dimly lit briefing room, Detective Morgan pinned the letter to the board, its presence a harbinger of change in their stagnant investigation. "This shifts the tide," she murmured to her colleagues. "Our perpetrator shows signs of remorse." Detective James Chen, her steadfast partner in this relentless pursuit of justice, cast a skeptical eye on the letter. "Or perhaps it's a ploy," he suggested, "a theatrically staged confession meant to mislead us." The forensics team's meticulous analysis led them to a vintage typewriter, its distinctive imprints pointing to a model long out of production. A rare find, but not beyond reach. With renewed determination, they canvassed antique shops and collectors across the region, chasing a ghost from the past in search of answers. As the investigation gained momentum, the detectives delved deeper into Rebecca's life, uncovering a trail of intrigue and betrayal. Her fearless pursuit of the truth had led her to confront a powerful family embroiled in a web of deceit and manipulation. The shadows of the past loomed large, casting doubt on every ally and unveiling hidden motives. Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, once a pillar of support, now found himself under scrutiny as the letter's revelations unfolded. His demeanor shifted subtly under the weight of suspicion, his once unwavering alibi now tainted by shadows of doubt. She feared she was being followed, he confessed, his voice laced with regret. I dismissed her concerns as paranoia, a fatal mistake. Amidst the unfolding drama, a second letter arrived, bearing the same chilling signature, a cryptic message hinting at dark secrets buried within the family's history. The hunt led the detectives to the opulent mansion of the deceased patriarch, where they confronted the eldest son, Richard, a man cloaked in shadows of deception. A breakthrough emerged when microscopic fibers on the envelopes linked back to custom stationery possessed solely by the family's youngest daughter, Eleanor. The web of deceit tightened as secrets unraveled, revealing a sinister alliance between Richard and Michael, a pact forged in shadows and sealed in blood. With the pieces of the puzzle falling into place, the truth emerged in a courtroom drama that would captivate the city. Richard's facade crumbled under the weight of evidence, his protestations of innocence drowned out by the damning testimony of those he had sought to silence. In the end, justice prevailed, albeit tinged with sorrow for lives lost and innocence shattered. As Richard was led away to face his reckoning, Detective Morgan sought out Rebecca's grieving parents, offering a silent gesture of solace in the wake of unspeakable loss. The blood-stained letters, now silent witnesses to a tale of betrayal and redemption, found their resting place in evidence storage, a reminder that even the most carefully orchestrated crimes leave behind a trail of breadcrumbs for those willing to follow. In the hush of night, the old typewriter whispered its secrets, a haunting reminder that truth, like shadows in the dark, can never truly be extinguished. Story 13, The Hidden Observer. The real estate listing made no mention of a basement. The blueprints offered no clue to its existence. Yet beneath the old carpet in the Mercer family's new home, a door lay concealed, its handle heavy with rust. With a collective effort, they pried it open, releasing a rush of stale air thick with the scent of damp earth. Descending the steps into darkness, they anticipated a storage space, but instead found a solitary chair beneath a swaying light bulb. And on the wall behind it, a chilling display photographs of themselves, taken from within their own home. The Mercers had moved into the suburban property during a winter of early darkness and bare trees. The house, with its character and history, seemed welcoming at first, but as they uncovered the hidden basement, the house's past began to intertwine violently with their present. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the scene, the crime unit already at work, securing the perimeter with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's voice trembled as she described the unsettling discovery beneath their living room floor. Connors, with practiced precision, instructed the team to document every detail before further exploration. The basement, small and stark, held only the chair and the eerie display of photographs documenting the Mercer family's every move. The investigation uncovered a perplexing lack of forced entry or theft, with only a blatant invasion of privacy haunting the family. As Connors delved deeper, the house's twisted history emerged. Previous owners had stayed for brief periods, each selling at lower prices, each unaware of the hidden basement. The contractor who renovated the house years prior denied its existence, his certainty shaken by the photos. Digital forensics unveiled a chilling truth: hidden cameras throughout the house, capturing intimate moments of every family that had lived there. Audio recordings further exposed the extent of the surveillance, leading Connors to order a thorough search of every hidden space within the walls. Behind the photographs, a secret monitoring station revealed the meticulous observations of a man named Edward Kelvin, the house's elusive builder who had seemingly vanished during construction. His final journal entry foretold the arrival of the next family, sending shivers down the investigators' spines. The manhunt for Kelvin ended with a discovery in the house's hidden spaces, where he had lived among the walls, watching the families like actors in his private drama. His delusions painted the families as his own, signed over to him by the act of moving in. Kelvin's trial exposed the extent of his surveillance network, revealing the house as a voyeuristic creation designed to observe its residents unknowingly. As the house was demolished and the families moved on, the haunting realization lingered that they had never been truly alone, that their privacy had been violated by an unseen presence within the very walls they had trusted. In quiet moments, the families found themselves questioning the safety of their new homes, haunted by the lingering presence of an observer who had documented their lives from the shadows. The memories of the house and its hidden secrets continued to echo, leaving them to wonder if they had ever truly been alone. Story 14. In the dim light of the attic, forgotten treasures awaited their rediscovery. Among them, hidden beneath a worn blanket, lay a porcelain doll of delicate beauty, its blue eyes frozen in an eternal gaze. Sarah and Michael stumbled upon this relic of the past, a piece of history veiled in mystery. They chuckled at the sight, dismissing it as just another relic of bygone days. As night descended upon the old Victorian house, an eerie stillness settled in the air. A heaviness lingered, and the silence seemed to stretch endlessly. But it was not until the morning light filtered through the windows that the true strangeness began to unfold. The doll, once tucked away in the attic, now perched silently at the foot of Sarah and Michael's bed, a silent sentinel in the darkness. The young couple, drawn to the house's ornate beauty and enigmatic allure, had unwittingly become entwined in its haunting legacy. Rumors of a troubled past swirled around the property, whispers of tragedies long forgotten but not forgiven. Detective Rachel Winters, a seasoned investigator, was called to the scene on a crisp autumn morning. The master bedroom held a grim tableau of the female victim, her body contorted in a macabre pose, eyes wide with terror. In the hallway, the male victim lay as if caught in a desperate attempt to flee an unseen horror. The crime scene bore no traces of a struggle, no signs of forced entry. Detective Winters observed the meticulous arrangement of the bodies, noting the unnatural precision as if the victims were mere puppets in a chilling display. Quietly, she spoke into her recorder, drawing parallels to a doll removed from its pristine showcase. The investigation unfolded like a dark tapestry, each thread leading deeper into a web of intrigue. Neighbors recounted eerie sightings: a shadow flitting across a window, the ghostly echoes of childlike laughter in the dead of night. The house seemed to hold secrets long buried, whispering of tragedies past. Forensic analysis revealed a haunting presence woven into the very fabric of the house. Microscopic fibers, remnants of vintage fabrics used in antique dolls, clung to the air like a spectral shroud. The attic, a focal point of the tragedy, bore witness to inexplicable phenomena, handprints unseen by mortal eyes, and a strange residue of porcelain dust mingled with unknown organic matter. Delving into the property's history revealed a chilling pattern of inexplicable death spanning decades. Each victim had sought to alter the attic's space, unaware of the sinister forces at play. A newspaper clipping unearthed by Detective Winters shed light on a tragic past a doll maker haunted by loss, his final creation a harbinger of doom. As the investigation delved deeper, a tale of dark magic and forbidden rituals emerged. Whispers of spirits bound to objects, of dolls crafted with human essence, echoed through the shadows. The line between reality and nightmare blurred, leaving no room for conventional explanations. However, the truth remained elusive, slipping through the cracks of time and memory. Suspects vanished into the ether, and evidence defied logical analysis. The doll, a silent witness to unspeakable horrors, eluded capture, slipping through the grasp of mortal hands. The house, tainted by its tragic legacy, stood empty once more, a silent sentinel to the mysteries that dwelled within its walls. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones of a spectral presence lingering in the attic, a faint echo of a bygone tragedy. Detective Winters, haunted by the case that defied all reason, retired from the force, carrying with her a burden of unanswered questions. In her final act, she sealed away a photograph of the doll maker and his creations, a reminder of the darkness that lurked in the shadows. And so the house passed into new hands, its secrets buried beneath layers of dust and time. But on quiet nights when the world slept and the shadows danced, whispers of a child's laughter could still be heard, a ghostly echo of a past that refused to be forgotten. Story 15. The mysterious package arrived without a return label, without a tracking number, just a simple cardboard box tinged with morning dew. It wasn't intended for Sarah Miller. The address was correct, but the name was a stranger's. She ought to have disregarded it, left it untouched on the porch, but an insatiable curiosity overtook her. With trembling fingers, she peeled away the tape, half expecting to find mundane contents like books or clothing. However, what lay within was far from ordinary, a solitary VHS tape accompanied by a single sticky note that read, "Watch alone." Sarah held the black plastic cassette in her hands, sensing an inexplicable weight to it, as though it bore the burden of some forbidden knowledge. Her fingers traced the rough edges of the tape, feeling the imperfections etched into the plastic casing. The handwritten note displayed a sense of urgency, each stroke of the pen conveying a message of importance. Surrounded by the usual sounds of suburban life, a distant dog's bark, children's laughter, the droning of a lawnmower, Sarah brought the enigmatic package inside her home, placing it on the kitchen counter. Doubt crept into her mind as she observed the unfamiliar name, Daniel Whitaker, printed on the box. She had resided in the house for years and had never encountered anyone by that name. Curiosity warred with unease as she eyed her dusty VCR, a relic of bygone days. There was something about the mysterious tape that beckoned to her, a riddle shrouded in worn black plastic. Ignoring her better judgment, Sarah inserted the tape into the VCR. Initially, static filled the screen, gradually sharpening into focus to reveal a dimly lit room illuminated by a lone lamp. The camera angle was askew, lending an air of urgency to the scene. A man sat in a wooden chair, his features obscured by shadows until he leaned forward and spoke. "My name is Daniel Whitaker." His voice, quiet yet resolute, filled the room. "If you're viewing this, someone has found you, and that means they will find me as well." As he spoke, his tired visage came into view, eyes sunken with fatigue, stubble covering his jaw, hair unkempt. I did not commit the crime. I need you to understand that. But they have planted evidence against me, my fingerprints, my DNA, though I never laid a hand on her. The camera trembled as Daniel adjusted it, revealing the stark emptiness of the room, bare walls, scant furniture, the dwelling of a man prepared to flee at a moment's notice. They have orchestrated everything. The official narrative will claim I knew her, that we quarreled, that witnesses heard our disputes. It is all false. I met Catherine Walsh only through the news, where I saw her face lifeless, murdered in her own home. And yet my DNA was inexplicably present at the crime scene. Detective Eliza Ramirez scrutinized an identical VHS tape on her desk, the fifth one to surface. 5 tapes, 5 disparate recipients, all bearing the desperate message of Daniel Whitaker, an individual accused of murdering Catherine Walsh, a man who had vanished without a trace following the discovery of her lifeless body. Initially, the Walsh case seemed straightforward, a young professional woman strangled in her own bedroom, no signs of forced entry, indications of a struggle. DNA evidence unequivocally pointing to Whitaker, whose fingerprints were already on file from a prior minor offense. Witnesses attested to seeing a man resembling him near her residence in the weeks leading up to the tragedy. Cell phone records placed him in the vicinity on the fateful night. A clear-cut case. Until the enigmatic tapes surfaced. The tapes complicate matters, Detective Ramirez recorded her thoughts. Whitaker is either weaving an intricate deception or unveiling something far more sinister. She studied the evidence board before her, smiling images of Catherine Walsh, harrowing crime scene photographs, maps pinpointing the delivery locations of the packages, and at the center, the driver's license photo of Daniel Whitaker, his eyes seemingly beseeching her for understanding. A pivotal breakthrough occurred when Ramirez unearthed that Catherine Walsh had been embroiled in a whistleblower case against her employer, Pharmacorp, a potent pharmaceutical entity with governmental ties. Walsh had stumbled upon irregularities in their clinical trial data, evidence suggesting a cover-up of severe side effects in a hastily launched drug. She was set to testify, a former colleague divulged to Ramirez in hushed tones, casting wary glances toward the door. Catherine possessed incriminating documents, proof that executives were aware of the issues yet chose to bury them. The trial was imminent. The detective began noticing discrepancies. The DNA evidence seemed too meticulously placed, detected in areas incongruous with the crime. Witness statements regarding Whitaker appeared rehearsed, echoing identical phrases across various accounts. Most disconcerting, surveillance footage from neighboring establishments inexplicably corrupted during the critical time frame surrounding the murder. 3 days following the initial tape, Sarah Miller received a second package. This one contained a trove of documents, clinical trial reports, internal memos, email transcripts, all originating from Pharmacorp and bearing Catherine Walsh's digital signature. Each document substantiated her claims. Detective Ramirez's focus shifted as she connected with other tape recipients, piecing together Whitaker's breadcrumb trail. Whitaker had been employed in IT security for a company servicing Pharmacorp systems. He had never crossed paths with Catherine, but had encountered her name flagged within an unconventional security protocol he accessed inadvertently. They were monitoring her, Whitaker revealed in a subsequent tape that surfaced. I stumbled upon the surveillance directives in the system. They were aware of her efforts to amass evidence. Then I found myself locked out of the network. The following day she was dead, and suddenly I was branded the perpetrator. The case unraveled when Sarah Miller discerned a crucial detail on her copy of the tape, a reflected image in a window behind Whitaker disclosing a row of storage units. Collaborating with Detective Ramirez, they traced the location. Within Unit 217, they uncovered a wealth of evidence: Whitaker's journal chronicling the conspiracy, Catherine's original files, and damning blueprints outlining Whitaker's frame-up, inscribed in the handwriting of PharmaCorp's security chief, a former law enforcement officer with access to evidence collection protocols. Justice was not swift. It materialized through a steady accumulation of irrefutable evidence. 3 executives faced indictments. The security chief confessed, striking a deal to testify against his superiors. The drug in question was withdrawn from consideration for market release. Daniel Whitaker emerged from hiding, a shadow of his former self, scarred by his time as a fugitive. The charges against him were dropped, yet the ordeal had left an indelible mark upon him. On a chance encounter, Sarah Miller conversed with Whitaker as he arrived to retrieve his tape. Gazing into his weary eyes, she posed the question, "Why me? Why send it to my address?" His response was laden with weariness. "The algorithm selected you. I required individuals unconnected to Catherine or myself, individuals who wouldn't be under surveillance, those who might still harbor trust in their own discernment amidst the media's allegations of my guilt." The former suspect and the inadvertent witness stood in contemplative silence, pondering the fragile boundary separating justice from manufactured falsehoods. At length, Sarah voiced, the erroneous address turned out to be precisely the correct one. The VHS tapes were dutifully logged as evidence, tangible reminders that truth often arrives cloaked in unexpected parcels, bearing unfamiliar names, awaiting the curiosity of those willing to delve within. Story 16. A mysterious arrival in the stillness of the night, a plain envelope with no trace of origin. Within its folds, a single brass key weathered by the relentless passage of time. Its presence stirred a sense of déjà vu in the homeowner, a feeling of a forgotten memory dancing at the edge of consciousness. With a curious heart, she tried the key in every lock that guarded her sanctuary, but not a single one yielded to its touch. It was a key without a home, a key that belonged to a past unknown to her. Yet when she placed it gently on the polished surface of her coffee table, a faint echo resonated through the silence, a solitary chime from the long silent grandfather clock that stood sentinel in the hallway, its gears frozen in time. The tale of Sarah Miller and the enigmatic key whispered through the corridors of the neighborhood, a quiet suburb now tinged with an unsettling air. The authorities were summoned, drawn into a web of intrigue spun from the simplest of objects, a key that refused to unlock any door. The responding officer, with a hint of skepticism in his voice, brushed aside Sarah's unease as a mere coincidence, a trivial mistake in the fabric of daily life. But Sarah held fast to her intuition, a seed of doubt planted deep within her soul. Reluctantly, the officer accepted the key into his custody, sealing it in a small evidence bag that would soon become the focal point of a sprawling investigation. In the dim light of Detective Robert Harmon's office, the brass key sat upon his desk, unassuming yet casting a shadow of unease across the room. His seasoned eyes scanned the background of Sarah Miller, revealing a life devoid of shadows, a retired teacher, a widow, a mother. No whispers of malice in her past, no hidden secrets lurking in the folds of her existence. She was, by all accounts, an innocent bystander thrust into the spotlight of the unknown. Forensic scrutiny unveiled no traces on the key save for Sarah's own, a puzzle with no solution. The envelope held no secrets, bearing only a generic postmark from a distant corner of the region. No fingerprints, no DNA, no breadcrumbs to follow. The key itself, a common schlage worn by the hands of time, told no tales save for the mystery it carried within its grooves. A breakthrough, unexpected yet welcomed, emerged as Detective Harmon delved into the depths of the department's archives. A key, a pattern, a connection to a case long forgotten, a storage unit, a chamber of horrors where blood mingled with shadows, where innocence met its demise. The key in Sarah's possession bore a resemblance to one long buried in the annals of unsolved crimes, a key that unlocked a chamber of nightmares. The search for the elusive Harold Jenkins unfurled like a dark tapestry, weaving a tale of hidden truths and unspeakable horrors. A man cloaked in shadows, a phantom in the night, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and shattered lives. Sarah, now a reluctant player in a game she did not choose, fortified her home against the encroaching darkness, a fortress of steel and vigilance against the unknown. As the tendrils of the investigation reached deeper into the past, the threads of fate intertwined, connecting Sarah and Jenkins in a dance of shadows and light. The key, a symbol of twisted desire, a macabre gift from a phantom's hand. The manhunt intensified, a nation holding its breath as the keymaster slipped through the cracks of society, leaving behind a trail of whispers and fear. In the heart of the wilderness, where nature's embrace met man's folly, Jenkins made his final stand, a lone figure against the backdrop of chaos. The tower, a bastion of solitude, became his fortress, his final refuge in a world turned against him. Negotiations faltered, words lost in the howling wind, as the truth of his crimes loomed large in the shadows. When the tower fell, when the truth was laid bare, Jenkins met his fate with a final act of defiance. His legacy, a journal of horrors, a testament to the darkness that dwelled within him, lay open for all to see. Sarah's name, a whisper on the pages, a ghostly reminder of a life spared by chance. The keys, silent witnesses to a symphony of sorrow, remained locked in their silence, each a tale untold, a life extinguished before its time. And in the stillness of the night, as the world slept, the echoes of a tragedy lingered on, a reminder of the fragility of life, the darkness that lurks just beyond the light. Story 17, the motel was a budget establishment, its age showing in worn carpets and faded wallpaper. Guests passed through its doors for a brief respite, not lingering longer than necessary. When the tired clerk handed her the key, a peculiar expression flickered across his face. "Just steer clear of the last door on the left," he whispered cryptically. Intrigue sparked within her, a flame of curiosity that beckoned her towards the forbidden. That night the hallway was cloaked in shadows as she navigated its length, her steps echoing softly. Pausing before the ominous door, she felt a chill travel up her spine as she touched the icy handle. To her eyes it seemed no different from the others, but when she pressed her ear against it, a faint breath whispered from the other side, sending shivers down her back. Detective Morgan Reed entered the scene, fatigue evident in her movements as she passed beneath the yellow tape marking the boundary of the crime scene. The air was heavy with the metallic tang of blood, a scent that spoke volumes to her trained senses. The room itself presented a stark contrast, a pristine bathroom, an untouched bed, and at the center, a scene of unspeakable horror. A young woman lay lifeless on the floor, her golden locks splayed around her like a halo, her vacant gaze fixed on the ceiling in eternal silence. Reed knelt beside the victim, mindful not to disturb the markers that punctuated the space. The forensic technician spoke matter-of-factly, capturing images of the tragedy. "It's the third one this season, same modus operandi," he stated flatly. Reed nodded in silent acknowledgement. Victim, elegantly dressed, seemed out of place in the seedy motel setting. Her designer handbag lay open, contents untouched, ruling out a simple robbery. It was clear that a deeper motive propelled this killer. The hotel manager lingered anxiously in the background, his complexion pallid with shock. "She checked in alone, paid in cash, I never imagined." His voice faltered. "The maid discovered her during routine cleaning." Reed surveyed the room, noting the absence of forced entry or defensive wounds. The woman had either willingly admitted her assailant or recognized them. Back at the station, Reed pinned up photos on the board, connecting the dots between three similar cases. The media buzzed with speculation, painting a portrait of a serial predator lurking in the shadows. Detective Hayes arrived with the autopsy report, detailing the cause of death as manual strangulation, devoid of DNA evidence under the victim's nails or signs of sexual assault. Reed pondered the personal nature of the crimes, straying from the typical predatory patterns. Days blurred together as the investigation deepened. Surveillance footage yielded no breakthroughs, painting a picture of an enigmatic killer. The victim, identified as Elaine Werner, defied the motel's image with her meticulous nature and professional background. A breakthrough surfaced during an interview with Werner's sister, unveiling a clandestine relationship with a mysterious man from her workplace. Known only as C, Reed delved into Werner's professional circle, uncovering a business card belonging to Charles Emerson, a senior vice president. Emerson maintained a composed demeanor when questioned, but a flicker in his eyes betrayed unease. Forensic evidence linked him to the crime scene, prompting a confession of their affair. However, Emerson denied involvement in Werner's demise, despite incriminating hotel records and surveillance equipment discovered in the adjacent room. Fibers from his suit, DNA traces, and digital evidence painted a damning picture of his guilt. Emerson's facade crumbled under the weight of irrefutable proof, revealing a calculated predator driven by fear of exposure. The trial unfolded swiftly, culminating in Emerson's sentence of life imprisonment without parole. Reed observed his stoic facade falter momentarily, exposing a void where remorse should reside. The case, dubbed the Door on the Left incident, captivated the public with its chilling details. Psychologists analyzed Emerson's motivations, while armchair detectives dissected the intricacies of the investigation. Yet for Reed, closure remained elusive, haunting her as she navigated hotel corridors, contemplating the mysteries concealed behind closed doors. In the evidence locker, 3 identical motel keys lay dormant, relics of a dark chapter in the motel's history. They served as tangible reminders that some thresholds once crossed lead to a realm where innocence is lost forever. Story 18. In the hushed stillness of an abandoned house, a phone screen glowed faintly on the dusty kitchen counter, casting a soft, eerie light in the darkness. Detective Morgan Reed found herself drawn to the device, a relic from a bygone era, yet it held a mystery that defied all logic. The call had come from this very phone, a call that should have been impossible. The number traced back to a woman long gone, Catherine Sullivan, deceased for 3 years, and yet her voice had whispered those haunting words, "He's here," he, before vanishing into the silence. As Morgan replayed the recording for the umpteenth time, the words echoed in her mind, filled with desperation and fear. The house itself seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for a revelation to break the eerie stillness that hung heavy in the air. The Sullivan family had once called this place home, until tragedy struck in the form of a devastating fire that tore through the West Wing, forcing them to flee. Since then, the house had stood empty, a silent sentinel to the past. But now, in the dim light filtering through the boarded-up windows, the phone sat as a ghostly remnant of a bygone life. It was as if time itself had paused, waiting for the truth to unveil its secrets. Morgan's partner, Detective Walsh, delved into the background of the mysterious call, only to uncover a chilling truth. Catherine Sullivan, the supposed caller, had perished in a car accident years ago, Her voice, captured in those fleeting seconds, defied all explanation. The investigation led them down a twisted path where the lines between reality and the supernatural blurred. The forensic team found no fingerprints on the phone, no traces of a living presence in the abandoned house. It was as if the call had emerged from the ether, a spectral echo of a past long buried. As they delved deeper into Catherine's life, her relationships, her fears, a chilling revelation emerged. Her journal, hidden away like a whispered confession, spoke of a love turned sour, of control and fear that had festered in the shadows. Mark Jennings, her boyfriend at the time of her death, emerged as a shadowy figure in the narrative. His alibi crumbled under scrutiny, his facade of innocence cracking as the truth came to light. And then, buried beneath the earth, they found Catherine's true phone, the one that had borne witness to her final moments. Deleted texts revealed a sinister truth, a tale of betrayal and violence that had been masked as a tragic accident. Mark's deception unraveled like a thread pulled too taut, revealing a web of lies and manipulation that had ensnared not just Catherine, but others who had crossed his path. His twisted game of creating the ghostly call was a macabre dance of deceit, a way to taunt those who sought justice for the victims he had silenced. As the trial unfolded, the truth emerged like a beacon in the darkness. Mark's words rang hollow in the courtroom, his attempts to deflect blame falling on deaf ears. Justice, long delayed, finally found its mark, a bittersweet victory for those who had fought to bring the truth to light. And in the quiet of the evidence locker, the phone from the abandoned house lay silent, a relic of a tale that had captivated the imagination. Officers whispered of phantom rings that echoed in the stillness, a reminder that some stories linger long after the final chapter is closed. Catherine's voice, though silenced in life, had found a way to speak from beyond the grave, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of darkness. And as the night stretched on, the house stood silent, a silent witness to the mysteries that lingered in its shadowed halls. Story 19, The Enigmatic Victorian. As she crossed the threshold, dust danced lazily in the stagnant air of the abandoned Victorian. Time seemed frozen within its peeling walls and draped furniture, each step echoing a mysterious whisper of the past. Yet amidst the eerie stillness, a perplexing anomaly awaited her. Every door she opened led her back to the same parlor, a relentless loop of familiarity in a place of forgotten memories. The only escape lay in retracing her steps, but when she turned, the front door had vanished into the shadows. Detective Sarah Lind stood at the doorway, gazing into the dim interior where forensic technicians moved soundlessly, like specters unraveling the secrets shrouded within. Once a mere curiosity among the locals, the Victorian now stood as a grim crime scene following the discovery of Morgan Pierce's lifeless body. Whispers of compasses spinning erratically and unseen eyes watching had given way to a chilling reality far beyond urban legends. Examining the scene, the medical examiner's hushed tones revealed the silent tragedy that had befallen Morgan. Seated in a vintage chair with a serene countenance, she appeared as if awaiting an unseen guest, hands folded peacefully in her lap. No signs of struggle marred the unsettling calm that enveloped the room, leaving seasoned investigators unsettled in its wake. Questions lingered in the air as Lind delved into the details of Morgan's final moments. A graduate student captivated by architectural enigmas, Morgan had ventured into the Victorian's depths in pursuit of elusive truths. Her journal spoke of peculiar acoustic phenomena, shifting doorways, and a sense of disorientation that transcended mere design flaws. It seemed the house held secrets that beckoned her to unravel its mysteries. As the investigation unfolded, a peculiar detail emerged from the autopsy, a trace of a rare alkaloid, hinting at a journey into realms beyond the ordinary. Conversations found in deleted messages hinted at a clandestine bond with someone who shared her fascination, delving into the esoteric lore of the house's hidden past. Adam Reeves, an expert in architectural anomalies, emerged as a pivotal figure in Morgan's quest for understanding. His knowledge of spatial distortions intertwined their fates, leading them down a path where reality blurred with ancient forces lurking in the shadows. Yet his alibi cast a shadow of doubt over his involvement, leaving the mystery shrouded in uncertainty. A revelation from the Blackwood family's hidden history shed light on a chilling legacy woven into the Victorians' walls. The claiming, a sinister force that had claimed lives over generations, whispered of a power beyond comprehension, a force that bound souls to the liminal spaces between worlds. A hidden chamber within the Victorian unveiled artifacts of bygone rituals, unveiling a connection to ancient deities and forbidden knowledge. The carving at its heart bore witness to a legacy of transcendence and sacrifice, echoing the fate that befell those who dared unlock its mysteries. As the investigation deepened, a grim turn of events unfolded, with Adam Reeves meeting a fate mirroring Morgan's demise. The enigmatic key he clutched in his final moments unlocked a truth that transcended the physical realm, a truth that bound them to the house's enigmatic embrace. In his final testament, Reeves penned a cryptic message, a haunting echo of the house's inscrutable allure. The truth, it seemed, lay not in escaping the house physically, but in transcending the illusions that bound them to its timeless embrace. With the case left unresolved and the Victorian condemned to silence, whispers of spectral lights dancing within its confines lingered in the night. Tales of visitors vanishing into its depths only fueled the mystique surrounding the house, a place where reality intertwined with the echoes of the past. Amidst the shadows of the abandoned Victorian, the truth remained elusive, a tantalizing enigma that beckoned the curious to unravel its secrets. For in the spaces between conventional reality, where doors led back to the beginning, lay a realm where mysteries whispered in the stillness of forgotten time, waiting to be unveiled by those brave enough to seek the unknown. Story 20, the aged apartment exuded a sense of history, its walls holding secrets whispered by time. The heating system, a weary sentinel of warmth, groaned in harmony with the pipes that rattled like old bones. It was a symphony of the past, or so they thought, but then she heard it, a voice gentle yet insistent, weaving through the vents like a ghostly thread. It wasn't the typical hum of distant conversations, it was a whisper calling out to her, beckoning her closer. Intrigued yet unnerved, she lined in, her heartbeat syncing with the rhythm of the unknown. A breath, icy and tantalizing, brushed against her cheek, followed by a soft, almost mischievous murmur. "I know you're listening." Detective Morgan Shaw stood in the heart of the vacant apartment, a lone figure amidst a sea of memories, her eyes fixated on the rusted vent cover, forcibly removed from its place on the wall. The forensic team moved with precision around her, capturing the scene in flashes of light and shadow. Alina Reeves, the missing soul whose absence had lingered for 7 long days, had finally been found, though not in the way anyone expected. She claimed to hear voices through the vents, Officer Patel recounted, his voice a somber echo in the empty space, but management dismissed her fears as mere quirks of an old building. Shaw knelt by the vent, tracing the desperate marks etched into the metal. They weren't the work of tools, they were the remnants of frantic fingers clawing for escape from within. The victim, Alina, a beloved kindergarten teacher with a penchant for nurturing life, both in her classroom and in her cozy apartment. Her absence had left a void in the lives of those who knew her, a gap filled with unanswered questions and whispered doubts. Her sister, a pillar of strength amidst the storm of uncertainty, revealed fragments of Alina's final days of paranoia, of unseen eyes watching, of voices that crept through the shadows. Shaw scrutinized the apartment anew, seeing beyond the surface. The meticulously made bed, the abandoned coffee mug, the chair positioned beneath the vent as though waiting for a listener. The forensics report painted a chilling picture. Fibers woven into the grate matching Alina's favorite cardigan, a foreign fingerprint lingering on the inside of the vent cover, and audio recordings that spoke of a haunting presence within the walls. Alone in her car, rain weaving a tapestry of melancholy on the roof, Shaw played the recordings from Alina's phone. A tremulous voice, Alina's, reaching out into the void. If you're there, show yourself. Silence stretched, pregnant with anticipation, before a response, a whisper so faint it seemed to dance on the edge of existence. Alina, dearest Alina, open up to me. The building, a silent witness to the passage of lives, held within its walls a history of departures shrouded in mystery. Tenants came and went, leaving behind echoes of their presence, echoes that whispered of unseen terrors and unspoken fears. Harold Weber, the enigmatic superintendent with keys to every door, seemed a benign custodian of the building's secrets. But beneath his placid facade lurked a darkness that Shaw could sense, a darkness that thrived in the shadows. Questioning him revealed little, his words a veil over hidden truths. Yet when pressed about the occupants of apartment 4B, a flicker of something unspoken passed through his eyes, a fleeting shadow of guilt. The investigation took a fateful turn when a hidden passage was unearthed in Alina's bathroom, a clandestine pathway weaving through the building's bones. Within its confines lay a trove of artifacts, a flashlight, a water bottle, remnants of a life lived in secrecy. Shaw's gaze turned to Weber's own abode, a pristine sanctuary masking the depravity within. His computer, a portal to his twisted world, held a digital diary of obsession, a chronicle of his unholy communion with those he watched from the shadows. The storage unit, a vault of horrors, revealed the extent of his depravity, the trophies of lives claimed, the remnants of souls devoured. Weber, apprehended in the dead of night, accepted his fate with a serenity that chilled Shaw to the core. His words, laced with a sinister certainty, echoed in the interrogation room. They all hear me in the end. The building speaks through me. The truth, a tapestry woven from strands of horror and despair, unfurled in the courtroom. Weber's facade cracked under the weight of evidence, his defense a fragile shield against the relentless march of justice. Guilty on all counts, he left the halls of justice with a smile that spoke of whispers unheard and shadows unseen. The apartment, a silent sentinel of bygone days, now stands empty, a monument to the darkness that lurked within its walls. New owners came, fresh paint covered old scars, but the whispers persisted. Residents spoke of voices carried on the wind, of cold drafts that bore the echoes of a past best left forgotten. The heating system groaned, the pipes rattled. It was a song of remembrance, a haunting melody that echoed through the halls of time. And still they tell themselves it's nothing out of the ordinary, a mere trick of the old building's bones. But deep down in the quiet hours of the night, they wonder if the whispers are real, if the shadows hold secrets too dark to fathom. Story 21, The Mystery of the Whispering Manor. The new homeowners brushed off the crackling old intercom system as a quaint quirk of their Victorian manor. It crackled late at night, a relic from another time, rewired but long forgotten. Curiosity stirred within the husband one fateful night, prompting him to press the button. A whisper, barely audible, crackled through the speaker, sending shivers down his spine. Why did you come back? The words hung in the air, unsettling and mysterious. His hands trembled as he stepped back, startled. His wife, watching from behind, denied ever uttering those words. Daniel and Meredith Parker had been drawn to the property by its charm and history, despite the unsettling presence of the intercom system. The house, nestled among ancient oak trees, exuded an air of tranquility that belied the eerie occurrences within its walls. The real estate agent had been visibly uneasy during the walkthrough, hinting at hidden secrets within the manor. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the property in response to a call about a potential break-in. As she stepped out of her unmarked vehicle, the gravel crunched beneath the tires, adding to the mysterious atmosphere. Something in the dispatcher's voice had piqued her interest, hinting at a deeper story waiting to be unraveled. Daniel greeted Detective Reeves with a solemn expression, leading her through the grand foyer where shadows danced in the dim light. He recounted the strange events that had unfolded, starting with the enigmatic messages emanating from the intercom. His wife, Meredith, sat rigid on an antique sofa, her eyes haunted by what they had discovered behind a hidden wall. Meredith's voice was steady but filled with unease as she revealed the existence of a small leather-bound journal hidden behind the wall. The journal belonged to Alina, the previous owner, whose elegant yet frantic handwriting detailed her suspicions about her husband Vincent's intentions. The final entry, dated 30 years ago, hinted at a grim fate that had befallen Alina. The investigation unearthed a dark past hidden within the walls of the manor. Vincent and Alina Blackwood, the previous owners, had a tumultuous history that ended in tragedy. Vincent's calculated actions to conceal his crime had gone undetected for decades until the truth was revealed by the whispers of the past. Human remains discovered beneath the garden shed confirmed Alina's tragic end, leading to Vincent's confession of the heinous crime. His chilling admission of silencing Alina through the intercom sent a shiver down the detective's spine. The house had been a silent witness to his deception, echoing the whispers of the victim he had buried beneath its foundation. Vincent Blackwood's trial concluded swiftly, with justice finally catching up to him after years of deceit. Daniel and Meredith, haunted by the house's dark history, made the difficult decision to sell the property. Before they left, they held a solemn memorial for Alina in the restored garden, a final tribute to the woman whose voice had echoed through time. As the new owners renovated the house, the old intercom system was removed, silencing the whispers that had plagued its halls. Workers reported strange occurrences during the process, attributing them to mere interference. Detective Reeves revisited the case file before it was archived, reflecting on the house's eerie ability to reveal the truth. The manor, now stripped of its secrets, stood silent and serene. Detective Reeves, driving past the property on her way home, felt a sense of closure. She slowed down, the window cracked open, listening for echoes of the past carried on the gentle breeze. The house had answered back, its mysteries laid bare for those willing to listen. Story 22. In a home where shadows danced in the corners and whispers lingered in the air, a woman named Rebecca Morgan found herself facing a chilling revelation. The attic, a place of forgotten memories and hidden secrets, beckoned her with its dusty embrace when a storm unveiled a leak in the roof. Reluctantly, she ascended the creaking stairs to confront the darkness that awaited above. Within the attic's depths, amongst the cobwebs and musty scent of neglect, stood an old dollhouse. Its miniature rooms held a haunting familiarity, the furniture meticulously placed, the details eerily precise. But as Rebecca peered inside, a sense of unease crept over her. The figures within were not mere dolls, they were tiny replicas of her own family, intricately carved with unsettling accuracy. Each figure mirrored a family member, frozen in time and space, as if captured in a moment of eerie stillness. Yet one figure stood apart from the rest, the figure meant to represent Rebecca herself, positioned by the attic door, a silent sentinel in the unsettling tableau. Tracing a trembling finger along the roof of the dollhouse, Rebecca felt the weight of realization settle upon her. This was not merely a child's toy left behind. It was a sinister reflection of her own existence, a twisted mirror of her reality that sent shivers down her spine. The discovery of the dollhouse set in motion a series of events that would unravel a web of deceit and obsession woven around the unsuspecting Morgan family. What began as a simple disturbance in their new rental property soon escalated into a nightmare beyond their wildest imaginings. Detective Sarah Harmon, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for detail, was called to the scene to unravel the mysteries that lay hidden within the walls of the house. As she delved deeper into the case, she uncovered a web of surveillance and manipulation that defied all logic. The miniature figures in the dollhouse were not mere decorations. They were tools of a twisted mind, a means of control wielded by an unseen observer. Forensic analysis revealed a level of obsession that chilled even the most seasoned detectives, an intricate network of cameras and recording devices, all aimed at capturing the intimate moments of the Morgan family's daily lives. As the investigation unfolded, a dark truth emerged, a truth that shook the very foundation of the Morgan family's sense of security. The perpetrator, it seemed, had been living beneath their feet, hidden in the shadows of their home long before they had even arrived. Martin Wells, the son of the previous homeowners, emerged as the mastermind behind the elaborate scheme. Driven by a possessive delusion rooted in grief and desperation, he had turned the dollhouse into a twisted control center, a macabre stage upon which he played out his voyeuristic fantasies. Through meticulous planning and insidious manipulation, Wells had invaded the lives of the Morgan family, turning them into unwitting puppets in his dark theater of obsession. His arrest sent shockwaves through the community, leaving a trail of questions and lingering fears in its wake. As the case reached its conclusion, Rebecca Morgan found herself haunted by the echoes of the past, by the knowledge that somewhere out there, another dollhouse might be waiting, another set of miniature figures positioned to mimic her every move. And so, as the shadows lengthened and the night wrapped its cloak of mystery around her, Rebecca vowed to leave behind the ghosts of her past and to forge a new path, far from the reach of those who sought to control and manipulate her. In the silence of the night, as the world drifted into dreams and the stars whispered their secrets, Rebecca closed her eyes, seeking solace in the promise of a new dawn. And somewhere in the darkness that lingered at the edges of her consciousness, the echo of a dollhouse stood as a reminder of the fragility of reality and the resilience of the human spirit. Story 23. The tale unfurls in the quiet hours of a closing costume shop, where the shadows lengthen and old inventory finds new homes. Among the forgotten relics, a woman's hand alighted upon a mask of delicate yet disquieting craftsmanship, its lifelike features etched with a mysterious allure. As she presented it at the checkout counter, the cashier hesitated, his voice a whisper of unease. "That's not ours," he muttered, casting a wary glance at the mask with no origin. Undeterred by the enigma, the woman, drawn to the mask's intrigue, decided to claim it as her own. Come nightfall, a soft rustle disturbed the hush of her slumber, a gentle shift of fabric, a barely audible breath of movement. Her eyes fluttered open to a sight that sent a shiver through her being. The mask, once perched on her dresser, now rested upon her nightstand, its gaze fixed upon her like a silent sentinel. This woman, known as Catherine Reed, was later discovered by a concerned neighbor, the morning light spilling into her home through the slightly ajar door, painting a haunting scene of stillness and mystery. Detective Morgan arrived to unravel the enigma that had claimed Catherine's life, the room a tableau of unanswered questions. Amidst the whispers of shutter clicks and muted conversations, the detective's keen eye caught details that hinted at a hidden truth. A partially open drawer, a lipstick-stained glass seemingly ordinary, yet cloaked in an air of foreboding that lingered like a shadow over the room where Catherine lay, forever stilled. The medical examiner's examination yielded no clear cause of death, no visible wounds to explain the terror frozen upon Catherine's features. The detective, her voice a murmur of solemn realization, sensed a profound fear that had gripped the woman in her final moments, a fear that transcended the tangible and delved into realms unknown. Catherine's life as an art appraiser, her discerning eye for authenticity, now cast a shadow of suspicion over her untimely demise. Colleagues spoke of her uncanny ability to detect the slightest discrepancies, a skill that perhaps had led her down a path fraught with peril. A visit to the abandoned costume shop unveiled a web of secrets shrouded in the mask's mysterious origins. The owner's hesitant confession hinted at a darker truth, of items imbued with a sinister legacy from a collector's estate sale marked by tragedy and unexplained deaths. Forensic findings of strange fibers embedded in Catherine's fingertips hinted at a desperate struggle, a futile grasp at an unseen threat. Each thread of evidence wove a tapestry of dread, linking Catherine's fate to a series of inexplicable deaths spanning decades, each victim marked by the same mask and an expression of pure terror etched in death. A retired detective, a bearer of forgotten truths, shared a revelation that transcended the bounds of reason, a ritual of soul transference hinted at by ancient symbols concealed within the masks, a cycle of possession that preyed on unsuspecting souls. In a hidden journal, Catherine's frantic words painted a portrait of encroaching terror, of a malevolent force that watched from the shadows, waiting to claim its next host. The mask, a harbinger of doom, a vessel for an entity hungry for life, moved unseen through the tapestry of existence, seeking out those attuned to its dark purpose. As the investigation unfolded, a chilling realization took hold. The mask was not a mere object, but a conduit for primal fear, a catalyst for a heart-stopping terror that defied rational explanation. Surveillance footage unveiled a spectral figure, a twisted reflection of Catherine herself, moving with mechanical precision, a puppeteer's cruel mimicry of life. The mask, elusive and insidious, vanished into the night, its dark legacy continuing its macabre dance across time and space. The detective, keeper of Catherine's final testament, bore witness to a truth that eluded official records, a truth that whispered of an ancient evil that slumbered in the hearts of men. And so the mask waits, biding its time in the shadows, a silent predator seeking its next unwitting victim. As the night descends and the world slumbers, it stirs, hungry eyes fixed on the unknowing, a specter of dread that lingers in the dark corners of the mind. The cycle continues, unbroken and eternal, as the mask's haunting legacy endures, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks beneath the veneer of reality. Story 24. The old wooden plank let out a soft creak under her weight, shifting slightly as she stepped on it. It was a subtle movement, but it caught her attention nonetheless. Curiosity piqued, She knelt down and ran her fingers along the edges of the loose board, sensing a hidden gap beneath. The floor wasn't as solid as it appeared. It was concealing something beneath its surface. With deliberate gentleness, she lifted the boards, revealing a dark, narrow space that lay hidden beneath her newly acquired home. At first glance, all she could see was dust and cobwebs, but as her eyes adjusted to the dim light, shapes began to take form in the shadows. A mattress, a chair, and tucked away in the corner, a weathered notebook, its pages filled with a single name, her name repeated over and over. Detective Morgan Reed stood silently behind Sarah Coleman as she peered into the darkness below. The fear in Sarah's eyes spoke of a deeper unease than just the discovery of a hidden room. It was a violation of her sanctuary, an intrusion of something malevolent into what was meant to be a fresh beginning. "Be careful not to disturb anything," Detective Reed's voice was steady yet commanding as she cautioned Sarah. Clicking on her flashlight, she cast light into the concealed space, revealing walls adorned with photograph surveillance images capturing Sarah's every move, from mundane tasks to intimate moments, a shrine of obsession crafted right beneath her unsuspecting feet. Sarah had purchased the quaint cottage from the estate of an elderly man named Walter Green, an individual who had passed away, leaving no known heirs. The property had sat vacant for months before Sarah stumbled upon it. The real estate listing had painted a picture of charm and minor renovation needs, with no mention of the hidden secrets lurking within. "I never met him, the previous owner," Sarah's voice barely above a whisper. "The neighbors said he was reclusive. I was told the basement access had been sealed off long ago. The inspection report never mentioned anything like this." Crime scene investigators arrived, their equipment clunking against the floorboards as they entered the hidden chamber. They meticulously documented the scene, collecting evidence and eventually extracting the mattress, chair, and notebook from their clandestine hiding place. Forensic analysis revealed a multitude of fingerprints, all belonging to Walter Green, scattered throughout the chamber. What troubled investigators the most was the timeline they uncovered. Through utility records and dated photographs, it became clear that Walter had been surveilling Sarah for at least 3 years before his demise. He had shadowed her at community events, trailed her to the store, and even frequented the cafe where she worked, all without her knowledge or recollection. This level of fixation often escalates, the department psychologist explained during a debriefing. The transition from fantasy to action, the hidden chamber indicates a readiness for a more direct approach. Detective Reed's investigation took an unexpected turn during an interview with one of Walter's former co-workers from the local shopping center's maintenance department. The man appeared uneasy, twisting his wedding band nervously as they spoke. "Walter mentioned her from time to time," he confessed hesitantly. "Said she reminded him of someone. I thought it was harmless infatuation. I never imagined." His voice trailed off, eyes fixed on his hands. "Did he ever speak of any intentions involving her?" Reed probed further. "Not explicitly, but he had this phrase he'd repeat, about how she belonged with him. I assumed it was just talk." Securing a warrant, Reed delved into Walter's workplace locker, untouched since his passing. Within, they discovered a key that unlocked a storage unit registered under his name. The unit revealed a chilling sight, a meticulous replica of Sarah's former apartment, complete with her furniture, decorations, and even a mannequin sporting a wig mirroring Sarah's hairstyle. Most unsettling was a calendar marked with a date just a week after Walter's death, circled in red with the word "together" scrawled across it. The investigation unveiled Walter's troubled past, his institutionalization in his youth due to an obsession with a teacher, his release, and years of uneventful living until Sarah unknowingly triggered his fixation. Spread across the conference table at the police station were crime scene photos documenting Walter's delusions. To him, they shared a special bond. He believed their union was inevitable, Reed explained to her colleagues. Is there a chance she had crossed paths with him unknowingly, sparking this fixation? Another detective inquired. Shaking her head, Reed replied, no evidence points to an encounter. Sometimes these fixations require little provocation. A passing glance, a fleeting smile that can be enough for someone with his history. Sarah made the difficult decision to sell the house, unable to shake the sense of violation lingering within its walls. During the final walkthrough with her realtor, she stood in the empty living room, arms wrapped around herself. I can't help but wonder what might have transpired if he hadn't passed away when he did, she murmured softly. If I hadn't noticed that loose floorboard, how long would I have lived here, oblivious to his watchful gaze, unaware of the secrets hidden beneath my feet? With Walter's demise, the case was officially closed, labeled as stalking with intent to abduct, though the abduction itself never materialized. Sarah relocated, altering her routines and safeguarding her personal information more vigilantly. Detective Reed sporadically checked in on her, a silent acknowledgement of the peril Sarah narrowly evaded. The cottage found new owners, a young couple unaware of its dark history. The hidden chamber was sealed off, the floorboards replaced, life carried on. Yet for those privy to the truth, the tale of the room beneath the floor served as a haunting reminder of the unseen dangers that lurk, of monsters who evade capture, and of victims who narrowly escape their fates. Story 25, The Enigma of the Vanishing Man. The quaint coffee shop had become his sanctuary, a place of quiet routine amidst the bustling city. For years, he occupied the same corner table, his presence a familiar yet enigmatic presence. The barista recognized his face, but his true identity remained a mystery to all. Then one day, he failed to appear. When the authorities investigated his usual spot, they discovered a wallet left behind, a solitary clue to his sudden absence. Inside the wallet lay a driver's license bearing a photo of the man, yet devoid of any identifying information, just a blank void where his name should have been. Detective Sarah Mercer delved into the perplexing case, her investigative gaze fixated on the enigmatic figure now dubbed John Doe in the official records. Reviewing the security footage, she observed the ordinary sequence of events. John entering the coffee shop, ordering his usual black coffee, and settling at his secluded table to write in his notebook. However, the footage held a chilling anomaly: John's inexplicable disappearance. After a routine visit to the restroom, he never returned. No exit, no trace. He simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind a perplexing mystery that gripped Mercer's curiosity. As she delved deeper into the case, Mercer uncovered a series of baffling clues within the abandoned wallet. Blank spaces where personal details should have been, credit cards linked to non-existent accounts, and a cryptic business card with only a faintly printed phone number, all pieces of a puzzle that refused to fit together. The barista's recollections offered little insight into the elusive man. Always solitary, always consumed in his writing, John had left no trace of personal connections or past interactions. His notebook, filled with cryptic codes and mysterious sketches of unfamiliar buildings, only deepened the enigma surrounding his identity. Mercer's investigation took a surreal turn when she noticed a peculiar pattern in the security footage, a flickering time stamp coinciding with John's daily arrival. Intrigued by this anomaly, she revisited the coffee shop and scrutinized the antique mirror hanging between the entrance and the restrooms, its ornate symbols mirroring those in John's notebook. Upon further inspection, the mirror revealed a hidden compartment containing a trove of identical wallets, each with a blank driver's license and a leather-bound journal filled with entries spanning decades. The journal hinted at experiments in temporal manipulation and identity transference, hinting at a reality beyond comprehension. The pieces of the puzzle began to align as a former physicist, Margaret Keller, shed light on John Doe's true identity as Daniel Weston, a brilliant scientist who had delved into the realms of quantum mirrors and parallel realities. Weston's disappearance tied back to the very research facility beneath the coffee shop, where his groundbreaking experiments had led to his enigmatic fate. In a climactic moment of revelation, Mercer uncovered a startling truth in the shattered remains of the mirror, a glimpse of two versions of Weston coexisting, a testament to his daring exploration of reality's boundaries. As the mirror lay shattered, a final message penned by Weston himself warned against further pursuit, signaling the closure of a chapter shrouded in mystery. The case of the man who slipped between the seams of reality remained unsolved, a haunting enigma that lingered long after the coffee shop's closure and Mercer's departure from the force. Yet whispers of spectral reflections and spectral figures persisted, a testament to the enduring legacy of Daniel Weston's elusive existence. Story 26. The gentle current whispered as it carried the water lazily that morning, the surface smooth as glass, reflecting the soft hues of dawn. A lone fisherman, lost in his thoughts, almost missed the sight of a solitary suitcase bobbing near the shore. At first glance, he assumed it was merely a discarded heap of old clothes, cast aside by the uncaring hands of fate. But as he drew nearer, a faint scent crept into his nostrils, thick and cloying, impossible to ignore. The suitcase, wrapped in chains weathered by time, revealed its secrets through rusted edges exposed to the elements. When the authorities pried it open, it was not garments that greeted them, but a haunting discovery. Within the confines of the case lay strands of hair, fingers frozen in a chilling grip of finality. And at the very bottom, a cryptic note whispered, "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer, a figure shrouded in mystery and calm resolve, raised a delicate handkerchief to her nose as she surveyed the grim tableau before her. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s, her dark tresses now tangled and her once pale skin marked by the caress of water, lay silently on the shore. The meticulous medical examiner, a silent sentinel of truth, meticulously recorded every detail before the body was gently lifted, as if in a final act of grace. It was not the manner of disposal that struck Mercer, but the eerie reverence with which the victim had been prepared. Manicured nails, hair styled with care, clad in garments of opulence. She was not brought here to be discarded, Mercer mused, her gaze following the rhythmic dance of the water against the muddy banks. She was arranged, adorned. The victim was identified as Catherine Walsh, a woman of ambition and solitude, a real estate agent renowned for her prowess in selling the most luxurious of properties. Divorced, childless, she dwelled in the solitude of an upscale enclave. Her colleagues painted a portrait of a woman driven by perfection, meticulous in her craft, a guardian of her own secrets. Her disappearance had been noted when she failed to grace an important showing, a potential milestone in her career now lost to the shadows. Catherine would never have missed that appointment, her assistant proclaimed, her voice tinged with disbelief. That sale was to be her crowning achievement. As investigators combed through the sleek, modernist expanse of Walsh's abode, a sense of unease settled upon them. Every corner exuded an air of sterile perfection, almost too precise to be real. Designer furniture stood as though frozen in time, every surface devoid of even a speck of dust. The refrigerator, a repository of ordered meals in uniform containers labeled by the passage of days. The closet, a symphony of colors and protective wrappings for pristine shoes. And then there was the anomaly, the slightly ajar drawer in her home office. Within its confines, a leather-bound journal lay in silent repose. The final entry etched upon its pages whispered of unseen terrors. He watches once more, same vehicle, different guise. In the digital realm, a curious trail emerged from the shadows of Walsh's emails, messages from unknown senders, all bearing the haunting refrain, "I see your perfection." Each missive, a mirror reflecting her own image, sent at precise intervals on disparate days. Her browsing history, a mosaic of inquiries into security systems and safeguards against the unseen. Mercer wove these threads together, a tapestry of dread and foreboding. The meticulous care in the arrangement of the victim's remains, the artful display, each a stroke in a macabre portrait of obsession. "Our perpetrator is no mere criminal," Mercer confided to her partner in whispers of revelation. "This was no crime of passion. This was a ritual, a ceremony of darkness." A glimmer of hope pierced the veil of uncertainty when an unexpected informant emerged, a humble pawnshop owner, a keeper of forgotten treasures. Recognition dawned upon him at the sight of Walsh's emerald necklace, a missing piece of her puzzle. The man who had traded it, a man of unassuming demeanor and silent footfalls, Michael Linden, a custodian of shadows, a harbinger of unseen horrors. Surveillance footage painted a portrait of Linden's presence within Walsh's world, a ghostly specter haunting her steps, his intentions veiled in darkness. When detectives delved into the recesses of Linden's modest abode, a chilling revelation awaited them. Photographs adorned the walls, images of Walsh and other women, their likenesses eerily similar, captured without their knowledge. Some faces were marked with the scarlet stain of rejection. Walsh, the third in a line of shadows. And hidden behind a deceptive faade, a shrine, emerged a mosaic of memories and mementos, a tribute to lives interrupted. In the chamber of interrogation, Linden sat stoic and unmoving, a riddle wrapped in silence. His appearance, a mask of normalcy, belied the horrors he harbored within. Confronted with the damning evidence, his voice, a whisper of the void, finally broke the stillness. "They were flawed," he intoned, devoid of emotion. "They paraded as perfection, but I saw the truth. Catherine's drawer, a chaos she hid, a blemish in her lipstick, a flaw in her guise. Her perfection was a lie." The search for the predecessors mentioned in his cryptic note led investigators to distant realms, where two more suitcases surfaced, each a vessel of sorrow. Within their confines lay women akin to Walsh, real estate agents who peddled perfection as their wares. In the hallowed halls of justice, Linden sat as a specter of despair, his fate sealed in the echoes of his deeds. A life term, a sentence devoid of redemption, a penance for his sins. In the wake of resolution, Detective Mercer found solace in closure, yet questions lingered like shadows in the fading light. What specter haunted Linden's soul? What imperfection within himself had driven him to these depths? The river, a silent witness to the passage of time, carried away all traces of turmoil, cleansing the waters of sin. But in the hushed confines of the precinct, upon Mercer's desk, lay the chilling remnants of Linden's legacy notebooks of darkness, a reminder that beneath the veneer of normalcy, beneath the facade of perfection, darkness lurks waiting to be revealed. And in the stillness of the night, as the world slumbers in the embrace of dreams, the most perilous predators are those who walk among us, unseen, their eyes watchful, their minds a labyrinth of shadows. Story 27, the aging library faced its fate, marked for destruction by the hands of progress. The laborers toiled away, nearing the end of their task, when a serendipitous misstep revealed a hidden latch nestled within the sturdy bookshelf. With a hushed click, the bookcase swung open like a secret passage, unveiling a dim corridor leading to a concealed chamber. The air within hung heavy, stagnant with the passage of time, untouched by human hands for decades. In that secluded space, devoid of furnishings save for a solitary chair bolted to the floor, a haunting message marred the walls: "I am still here." The construction foreman wasted no time alerting the authorities, calling in the law enforcement to investigate. What had begun as a routine demolition swiftly morphed into a chilling enigma. Detective Morgan Walsh, a seasoned investigator with 2 decades of experience under his belt, stood at the threshold of the hidden room. His flashlight pierced the darkness, casting an eerie glow on the repeated message that loomed ominously around him. "Secure the perimeter," Walsh's directive resonated through the confined chamber, the weight of his words echoing in the stillness. "No one disturbs a thing until forensics arrives." The library's storied past added layers of intrigue to the unfolding mystery. Once in possession of the influential Harrington family, the library had been bequeathed to the public following the unexplained disappearance of their daughter, Rebecca. She had vanished without a trace during her final year of college, leaving behind only her abandoned car near the edge of the woods. Despite extensive search efforts and investigations, the puzzle of her disappearance remained unsolved. The prevailing belief leaned towards the notion of a voluntary departure, but her family harbored suspicions of a darker truth. As forensic experts meticulously combed through the hidden room, they unearthed a trail of evidence, a tangled web of hair and fibers embedded in the chair, minute traces of blood and skin cells etched beneath the surface of the scratched walls. Initial analysis hinted at a young female origin, hinting at a harrowing tale of captivity and struggle. Walsh, driven by a gnawing sense of unease, delved into the history of the Harrington lineage. The timing of the library's transfer to the public following Rebecca's disappearance struck a discordant note. A deeper probe unveiled a disturbing connection. The very bookshelf concealing the clandestine chamber had been installed by a contractor exclusively hired by Maxwell Harrington, Rebecca's uncle and the family's patriarch. Financial records hinted at transactions far exceeding standard renovation costs, painting a sinister portrait of hidden agendas. Former library staff, interviewed in the wake of the revelation, expressed shock at the revelation. None had been privy to the existence of the hidden room, though one elderly librarian recalled Maxwell's peculiar obsession with the untouched section, spending solitary hours cloistered within its walls under the guise of reverence for its historical significance. The unsettling truth unfurled as forensic analysis confirmed the genetic link between the biological remnants in the hidden room and Rebecca's DNA samples, sourced from her personal effects. The chilling realization dawned: Rebecca had not fled, but had been ensnared behind the deceptive façade of the bookshelf, likely by a member of her own kin. With a warrant in hand, the detectives stormed the Harrington estate, unearthing a damning piece of evidence in Maxwell's study, a concealed journal chronicling his disturbing fixation on his niece. The entries painted a disturbing picture of obsession, culminating in a grim ultimatum. Maxwell's veneer of innocence shattered as he was confronted with the damning proof, his hollow confession unveiling the grim truth. She knew too much. Maxwell's voice wavered, devoid of remorse. I couldn't let her shatter everything we had built. The macabre confession laid bare a tale of betrayal and entrapment. Maxwell had orchestrated Rebecca's captivity, her defiance leading to a fatal confrontation that sealed her tragic fate. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed the presence of human remains beneath the chamber's floorboards, the excavation revealing Rebecca's skeletal remnants, adorned with the silver bracelet gifted to her on her 20th birthday. The Harrington family, shadows of their former selves,